Okay, so I will call to order the January 10th, 2022 meeting of the Village of Weston Planning Committee. And we'll also call to order the January 10th, 2020 meeting of the Village of Weston and Joint Town of Weston ETZ Committee to order. Roll call of the Plan Commission. Will you please, if you respond and you're on Zoom, please say so, announce your name, or you're gonna ask their names. Or Valerie, are you here?
Yep, I am here. So
And
White, oh, go ahead.
And I'm also gonna ask when we have votes on issues that everybody, we do a roll call vote so everybody is clear whose vote there and who's speaking. So Valerie?
White,
Here.
Meinel,
Here.
Cronin,
Here.
Gerndt,
Here.
Jordan,
Here.
Marshall,
Here.
Mumper,
Here via Zoom.
and then alternates Maloney
Here.
and Zagami.
He's excused.
And then ETZ, got Olson
Here, Zoom.
and Meinel,
Here.
Christensen,
Here.
Hull,
Here, Zoom.
oops, okay, and Gerndt,
Here.
okay.
Cronin. I'm Cronin, so yeah.
Is Steve Cronin, Valerie?
Did I miss him? Cronin? Oh, sorry.
Okay, now we come to the section of the meeting. It's called public comment. Please be advised per state statute section 1980.84.2, the information will be received from the public. It's a policy of the village that there be a 5-minute time period per person with time extension for the plan commission's chair's discretion. We further advise that there may be limited discussion on the information received. However, no action will be taken under public comment. I have 2 public comments requests written. I'm going to ask both of them, Mr. Gall and Mr. Pincinel, if you want to speak now or when it comes up on the agenda.
On the agenda, yes, agenda item.
Okay, please remind me when it comes up. Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to make a comment or other social media? Who's watching that for us? Michael?
Yeah, I don't see any hands up or any chats. So.
Okay.
Valerie had a request for a call-in tonight for a public comment, but I don't know that they're online or connected.
Yes, we are.
Yes, I would like to make a public comment.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure. James Russell, 5907 Tricia Avenue, Weston, Wisconsin.
Thank you. Your comment, sir.
Okay. Of the 50 states, the 4 states with higher real estate taxes than Wisconsin are Connecticut, New Hampshire, Illinois, and New Jersey. Wisconsin has a distinction of being the 5th highest real estate taxed state in the nation. That means there's 45 states that have lower real estate taxes than Wisconsin. The state property tax law imposes levy limits or levy caps on local government to try to protect property owners. Those limits can only go up when there is new construction in a community. Once the new construction in a community is assessed, the Wisconsin Department of Revenue then takes that figure and compares it to the community's total equalized value from the year before. The resulting percentage change is the amount the local government can increase its levy. If there were no loopholes or exceptions, the real estate taxes would remain static from year to year. Only new construction would increase property tax collections. So more people would be paying real estate taxes, resulting in lower property taxes per individual. Now, if businesses were allowed to grow organically, dependent upon their resources only, they would be adding to the overall increase in property tax collections, resulting in lowered real estate taxes per individual. In Wisconsin, this isn't the case. Construction occurring in a TIF district is not used to calculate net new construction. The new development in the TIF district does not pay property taxes to the levy. The TIF district keeps those property taxes for itself to fund its projects. that means everyone else in the community and county can face higher property tax bills to fill that gap. Now, Wisconsin's TID 1 was opened in 1998, and it was set to close in 2021, which would have been great news for taxpayers. It is currently pulling in an unbelievable $5.4 million a year in property tax revenue. By comparison, the village of Weston's property tax collections are only expected to be $4.5 million. So I'm looking at some of the expenses they want to do, and some of them may be acceptable and others not. Development incentives, $2.75 million. Administrative, legal, and planning, $723,000. And in view of what's been done in the past, and specifically, I'd like to address the Camp Phillips Center project that the city developed. Now, they had expenses there. Some were given as refunds, but the expenses totaled $3,267,361.55. They received a refund of $2,345,293.85. The net village investment totaled $922,067.70. That's what the village ended up spending for a project that never went forward. And why didn't that project go forward? Because they didn't request a DNR permit to develop that land. So thereby it was canceled. For instance, as an analogy, if I was to buy a house and decide I'm going to add a garage onto this house, and I never went to the city to get a permit to add that garage on, and I went ahead and spent the money, spent the architectural fees, the development fees, built the house, bought the lumber, the city would come along. You didn't get a permit from us, so you're going to have to tear that down. You know, I mean, this is just total incompetence. I can't imagine if this was a business that was running with that kind of gross incompetency, that person would no longer be working. You don't lose $922,067.70 and keep a job. So I think, you know, I haven't spoken with anybody in Weston that is appreciative of the money spent on the obelisks or some of that other beautification expenses. Now, I know the city is looking to raise the levy for safer, and that's allowed under the state. And I think that's exactly what the village of Weston needs to get back to, get out of this idea, this yes, but for, and financing businesses, and provide what a city is designed to provide: water, fire, and safety, EMS, that type of thing. But you're going to raise the levy limit to provide for safer. So if there's anyone that totally disagrees with anything I said, I would like to hear some comment on it, because everything that I said is perfectly factual.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions or comments, sir?
I do have a question.
Any plan commission members have any questions?
No, I do not. Those are just the comments.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there any-
I do oppose what they're doing just because of the way things seem to be mishandled.
Thank you for your comments.
You're quite
Keith, I
welcome.
noticed you were shaking your head when he asked, is there something, do you want to address something that he wasn't
I
sure?
don't think it's appropriate, where our discussion is about tip two. And I guess
It's further on the agenda.
it's further on the agenda, we have a presentation, we'll talk about some of those things relevant or relative to tip two tonight.
Okay.
So,
And like I say, we have two other comments. You're gonna wait until that comes up on the agenda?
Please.
No? Moving along, minutes from previous meetings. Item 4, minutes from the December 13th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission. Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Jordan,
Second.
second by Garrett. On the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Pardon me, I forgot. Roll call. All opposed? So carried. Item 5, minutes from the December 13th, 2021 joint PC and board meeting. This is just the PC approval.
Move to approve.
Moved by Jordan,
Second.
second by
Bumper
Bumper.
on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. On the question, roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? So carried.
Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the October 11th, 2021 joint PC ETZ meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. Time right now.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of October 11th, 2021, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed?
None.
Okay, motion carried, minutes stand approved as printed. Thank you.
Thank you, Milt. Item communications, disclosure and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals during this time. Any written communications received, either from Valerie or, okay. Unfinished business, reconsider kit,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I just would ask the commission and the committee if possibly item number 11 could be brought forward. For the only group that's here in person further, is that possibly if 11 could go first, because I kind of think that this is possibly pretty lengthy. You have 3 members right here.
That's up, if someone on the plan commission wishes to take our agenda out of order, that's, they should so indicate.
I would propose to do that.
I'll
Is there any
second.
I'll second, okay.
I was gonna say, is there any opposition to that? No. Okay, we'll move to item 11. And this is project number 20210-439. Dan Higginbotham of Clover River Land Company Incorporated on behalf of Lorraine Moran at 8504 County Road J, Weston, requesting a rezone of approximately 5 acres of land at 8504 County Road J from AR agricultural to residential zoning district to RR5 rural residential zoning district. This is for the plan commission. And I'll open the public hearing. Presentation by staff.
Sure. We've received a CSM to divide 5 acres off a larger parcel. The current parcel is agriculture and residential, which has a minimum lot size of 20 acres. So the 5 acres would need to get rezoned to rural residential 5. And that is what the request is for you today. Proposed use of the 5 acres is for potential development of single-family home somewhere in the future. There is some wetland on the property to the north. And as you'll see in the packet, we did ask for some supplemental questions specifically for future land use, as this is future land use as ag, which allows for some rural residential 5, but on a limited basis. And so we wanted the question addressed of making sure this division wouldn't impose any issues on future long-term development to the area. So those questions are in there. So yeah, that's the basis for this request, and I'll take any comments or questions from Plan Commission.
Do you have any questions or comments for Emily? Are there any public comments, either for or in opposition?
I would just, we're here to answer questions if you would have questions, Warren.
Step forward. Would you want to make a short presentation or?
Dan Higginbotham, Clover River Land Company on behalf of Lorraine Moran. There's an existing residential property just north of Lot 1 and east of Lot 2, obviously along West Neck Street, which is roughly 2 acres. So and that property is zoned RR2. So we feel that we're not creating a spot zone by creating an RR5 zone, and there's further residential development to the south of this parcel. So it is fitting with the area, doesn't create an outlier. And Matt is a nephew of Lorraine's, and so it's kind of a family family division. So be happy to answer any further questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Higginbotham?
There's the zoning map, Michael, if you wanted to, I think it's right above this one, just to kind of show where it sits. Rather large though. So that green is the RR2 he was just mentioning. That would be how that would zone out.
It's on the extreme eastern border of the village.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishes to speak in favor or in opposition? Anyone else wishes to speak in favor or in opposition? Either anyone raising their hand on Zoom or other social media? No. Okay. I'll close the public hearing. We have a recommendation from staff.
Staff recommends approval.
Okay.
And I did print off the determinations again for you guys in front of you. So,
Mr. Marnell, you want to take discussion recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the ETZ?
I'm sorry, say it again.
It doesn't have to go to ETZ.
Oh, excuse me, I'm on the wrong thing. Okay. Discussion and recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the Plan Commission. Discussion, Plan Commission members?
I don't have anything.
And we will fill out the determination that we've been doing in the years past.
So do we want to read through that determination?
You can do it beforehand, anybody makes any motions. Okay. Is the proposed rezoning consistent with the comprehensive plan as is required by the Wisconsin statutes?
Yes.
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 Does the rezone further the purpose and intent of this chapter?
Yes.
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 Does rezoning address any of the following that are not properly addressed on the current official zoning map? There are three choices here. A mistake was made in mapping on the official map. I don't think that's it. Factors have changed such as the availability of new data and presence of new roads and other infrastructure, additional development, annexation, or other zoning changes, making the subject property more appropriate for a different zoning.
yes, I think number 2.
You think number 2? And the third one is growth patterns or rates have changed, thereby creating the need for a rezone.
I would say 3 personally. That's just.
We can have 2 and 3.
2 and 3.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Okay, and finally, does the proposed zoning district maintain a desired consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts as it related to the environs of the subject property?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, on all 1 through 4. Would anyone care to
I'll
make
make a motion to approve the rezone request.
Moved by Garrett,
Second.
second by Cronin. On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? So carried. Thank you. Back to the order. Item 8, unfinished business, reconsider TID 2 project plan amendment.
I think rather than sit at my desk, I'm gonna try to get to the microphone here. Hopefully you can hear me better.
Okay. Well, we'll have the presentation by Mr. Donner first, and then he may answer some of your questions in the presentation.
So, okay, yeah, I think that's fixed up pretty well. Michael's gonna be controlling the screen, so I had furnished in the packet.
Can you give us your name and address?
Oh, Keith Donner, Village of Weston Administrator, sorry. Feedback. I hung that up.
Oh.
We okay, are we good to go with that? Right, following up discussion that took place at our December meeting of the joint meeting of the Plan Commission and the Village Board, talking about the prospect of revisiting the project plan amendment for TID number 2. I put in the packet a presentation slideshow here that potentially will be used at a public hearing if we go to that point. And also there was some background information kind of supplementing and supporting what is in this presentation. So I'm gonna kind of buzz through this. Some of these slides have been presented previously. I don't think we're proposing something radically different here, but having taken feedback from last week's or last month's meeting, attempted to address the Plan Commission's questions that were raised, which I know were part of the minutes that you already have reviewed tonight. So Michael, if you could go to the next slide.
Mr. Donner? Do you want feedback from the Plan Commission members on a point that as you come across it in the presentation, or do you want them to wait?
Either way, I guess that's fine. If you wish to be recognized and we try to address something as we go through, that's fine. It's possible we may, address it as we go through the whole presentation, and maybe better to wait till the end.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
All right. So again, we're back here to, revisit what took place back in September of 2021. We held a public hearing on a proposed project plan amendment to TID number 2. At that time, the project plan was deemed a bit too ambitious by the Plan Commission, I guess, and just to summarize, that it was not something that was they were willing to support. So that plan amendment proposal was rejected. Part of that, however, also had included a boundary amendment that had been recommended to remove some territory. So we revisited that and we made a amendment to the boundary as a modification of that particular proposal. The other situation that has not occurred, of course, as we have explained, is that a decision has not been made, a determination has not been made to close TID number 2. And I guess the reason we're back here is because there had been some sentiment expressed that perhaps there's some opportunities that are before us. If we were to adopt a project plan amendment to be able to offer some development incentives and do some redevelopment or development to some blighted properties on the Schofield Avenue corridor, as had been identified in our Schofield Avenue corridor plan. So that brings us again back to where we are. So next slide, Michael. So these principles haven't changed. The reason that we're back talking about a plan amendment to TID number 2, of course, is that as we explained last time, we don't have the explicit ability to be offering development incentives, redevelopment incentives, and also need to make an amendment if there's a consideration of spending additional funds in TID number 2. So slide kind of just summarizes some of the benefits, of course, increasing commercial activity in the TID, being able to assist businesses in development and redevelopment, and some supporting infrastructure improvements. And then again, advancing opportunities from the Schofield Avenue corridor plan. Next slide. So we talked, I know that this has been presented before, the possible benefits to landowners and business owners. Again, the assistance that's possibly available by closing financing gaps, site preparation, including demolition. These are things we've talked about, including in the project plan, possible land acquisition, improving the building quality in the corridor, things of that nature. And then again, the supporting infrastructure eligibility. Next slide. And of course, we're not proposing rezoning. These are things that will be initiated by landowners. We're not requiring anybody to sell land. There's no immediate spending that's authorized. All the proposals to spend come up as projects are presented. I know we've talked at multiple times about the fact that projects being included in the plan become eligible. We're not committing to spending anything until a project is proposed or a development incentive may be proposed and so forth. Next slide. So after our last meeting, there was a direction provided that the Plan Commission had a sense of buy-in, if you will, to a modified project plan that would scale down the public infrastructure that might be eligible in this plan. You know, if this were taken to public hearing, amended budget would have I think there's been a sentiment expressed that there wanted to be more emphasis on development incentives, redevelopment incentives. And that could include things like site preparation. In today's economy, some extraordinary project costs, which I think people are running into. Contractors are telling us that. Heath Tappy has made mention of that in terms of the subdivision that's going in on Birch Street. Of course, he's not eligible for such things, not being inside of a TID, and of course, being a residential development. Land purchase, and then working on marketing and, you know, again, bridging financing gaps, trying to satisfy that but-for test. These things would not occur but for TID assistance. And then, of course, the list of potential infrastructure projects was pared back here in this draft that's been put together, limiting any infrastructure projects to things directly on Schofield Avenue. And, you know, that includes Schofield Avenue reconstruction, some intersection improvements, pedestrian crossings. The only one project or one priority one project was left in there. That being the Schofield Avenue repaving. The others were left as priority two projects and in the proposal as it stands. Next slide. Based on the discussion last time, this is still consistent with what was in there before. Expanded the potential budget on redevelopment to 2.75 million. There's still, of course, a projection that was done for financial growth within the TID as part of this project plan. This will have to be revisited, but there was a projection there could be as much as $30 million of assessed value created before TID 2 would retire if it remains open. And again, this is an opportunity that's before us to keep this open, or before the Plan Commission as they discuss this. Next slide. I guess to back up on that just a little bit, and I don't know if I mentioned or emphasized it, but the reason that we embarked on this whole process was because the village board had provided the direction that they wanted the staff to proceed with a project plan amendment back almost a year ago, February of 2020, or 2021, I'm sorry, we're 2022, aren't we? So this just summarizes what the first priority projects are in the project list that appears later in the slide and was also provided to you in the handout. Again, the repaving of Schofield Avenue, Birch to Western Village limits. That's an estimated number of 3.5 million in here. And then acquiring and preparing land for development at a $750,000 estimate. The other projects that are in that list have been moved on to a second priority. Next slide. This is the summary of the proposed amendment to the spending and the categories of spending in the TID. You have the infrastructure as line item number one there. The development incentives, second. So 4.25 million in the infrastructure, 2.75 in the development incentives, and then administrative costs and estimated financing costs. These are in some, a little over $8 million in the estimate. So those then carry through and you got the right-hand column that just gives you that estimated total authorized spending in the TID. So
Keith, could you just please explain to us what category 1, 2, 3, and then plus 2, 3 is? I mean, I understand what 2, 3, the 2 plus 3 is, but where are we coming up with numbers from 1, 2, and 3?
number one would be the original TID project plan approval from,
Way back.
when did it been, 2004?
Okay,
And then number two would be the First Amendment. This one, the third column would be what's proposed in this TID, this current proposed amendment or draft amendment.
thank you.
Next slide. We've seen these maps before. This, of course, is the redevelopment candidate areas. The larger areas that have multiple parcels in them are areas that were identified in the TID or in the Schofield Avenue corridor plan. Other potential candidates are single sites that have like a star on them. If you look at this in more, more expanded view or a zoomed in view. Next slide. And that's just another depiction of that. You can move on. So last time we had some input on some things that had questions relative or with respect to some estimates on financial impacts of opening versus, or remaining open versus closing and things of that nature. So these next slides are an attempt to revisit those questions that were brought up by the commission last time. So if we were to close TID 2 now, we'd bring back the $70,665 to the general tax levy. I think there's a misconception that when people see the total amount of increment that's generated in a TID, that all of that increment comes back to the tax roll. That's not correct. So that, going back to the commenter's statement earlier, that would be one thing relevant relative to TID number 1. And I do want to keep TID 1 out of this discussion. If I could ask that as a matter of protocol here or point of order, that this topic tonight is TID number 2, not TID number 1. So I guess in the end, this reduction or this amount of money coming back to the general tax roll could reduce the village tax rate by 9 cents per thousand. I think that's the number we've talked about. That was presented back in September 2021. It has not changed. So net additional benefit to the general operation though, net of administrative costs going back to the general fund is only $17,800. This would reduce the percentage of equalized value in the village's 2 TIDs from 29.7, almost 30%, to 27%. So I guess relatively speaking, TID 2 is minute in the scheme of things. So just a point I get to be made here. Next slide. So our finance director, Jessica Trellman, had contacted the other taxing authorities and had asked to get some estimate of what the impact of closing TID number 2 would be to their levies, their rates. We didn't get information about their rates. Now, I guess at the risk of making a off-base comment, there was a bit of an analysis done internally that aside from these numbers here, due to the fact that these entities, these taxing authorities have much higher equalized values, much larger base, the combined effect to all of these collectively would be approximately also the 10 cents per thousand. So the same, all three teams. So in total, I guess if you were to add them up, it might be in the range of 20 cents per thousand. Between the village and these other tax authorities. That's without getting their actual calculation on the tax levy. So,
But Keith, that doesn't, go to the taxpayer.
well, it would reduce their
Theoretically.
tax rate.
So it is actual 20 cents for every, when we're presenting here, it's an actual 20 cents that'll hit their tax.
Between the village and these three
Okay.
Yes.
overall.
All right, thank you.
So the village would account for about half.
Understood.
Is our best guess. That's not a number to be taken as gospel, I guess. We try to get better verification of it if possible, but anyway, enough said on that. Next slide. So disadvantages, we close TID, we lose the ability for village to be a partner in these development and redevelopment projects on Schofield Avenue until we could form another TID in 2032. We're assuming TID 1 would need to remain open because there's still debt out there and there's projects that are being proposed to be taken on. So again, going back to that estimated administrative cost that's being brought back to the general tax levy, currently being supported by TID 2, that's that 46,400. And then any infrastructure projects we take on that currently might be eligible in TID 2 would end up having to be funded under the general tax levy and as debt service. And the example we used, if we were to borrow the $3.5 million on Schofield Avenue repaving, we estimate just if that were, say, amortized over 20 years, a 30 cents per thousand impact on the tax roll. Next slide.
He's gonna ask you one more quick question.
Sure.
46.4 that goes back to general tax levy. Is there any cost associated with that we can use in this reference?
I'm not sure what I mean, what
Well,
you're,
what is it gonna cost us as a taxpayer?
I believe that's
would-
salary, right?
Those are current salaries that will not change with the closure of the TIF.
So.
right, we've already,
The TID also funds some of their salary, correct?
yes.
You divert current salaries into the TIP.
Yep.
Because you can.
Yeah, but if you're gonna close the
On,
TID,
you bring them back into the general fund.
okay,
Right, so they're being paid, they're being covered on that portion that's coming back to the levy. And then the nets that's left for other things,
46.4 is gonna ultimately affect your general fund though,
right,
right? It's gonna cost money.
In the previous screen, he said that we're able to raise it, or we will get an additional $70,000 back to our general tax levy above and beyond new net.
Okay.
Back to 46.
So that will cover the 46,000.
And what's left is the 17.
I don't know if that,
so the math may not quite be right here. I probably has to get massaged.
That's all I was trying to do, so we get accurate numbers, that's all,
Right,
relevant numbers.
70 minus 17, what is that? That's 50, no,
50.
is it 53 or 40? 53, yeah. All right. Moving, next one, Michael. I think we got. So one of the questions we did not know the answer to necessarily last time was, we can keep TID 2, if no, keep TID number 2 open. If there's no firm commitments for project expenditures. I guess that comes out of the question or the feedback we received that, at least my take on it was that we wanted to have commitments or make expenditures for project incentives, development incentives before we made any commitments to pay anything for infrastructure. So not necessarily knowing if we had any projects, I didn't know, we were questioning if we could adopt the project plan and then not necessarily make expenditures. My questions, I think, to DOR maybe got a little wordy. So if you can go to the slide that follows, I did get a reply from both Greg Johnson at Ellers, and then also from the Department of Revenue. Initial responses from the DOR were a little bit more open-ended, if you will, but then there was a question about that by our financial consultant, who was being more conservative, that yes, we need to close TID 2 if we do not adopt the project plan and have no commitments to make additional expenditures as long as we have sufficient funds to pay it off. And that's the situation we're in. Then this reply from Wisconsin Department of Revenue was amended last Friday, and you were all furnished a copy of that email. And the bottom line, or the conclusion recommendation, is then that we do need to make this decision either to continue and adopt the project plan for TID number 2 by April 15th of this year, or make the determination to close it by that same date. Next slide. So this is a modification of that slide that was in there initially. Both Ellers and Department of Revenue are in agreement on this. The project plan amendment needs to be adopted by April 15th. And if there is no amendment, TID number 2 should be closed. So, go ahead.
One more clarification, Keith, when you were running through that, you mentioned, projects versus, so the question you asked the state, was if you didn't create a project that you were gonna for sure spend money on, which we talked at the last meeting about holding back on fixing Field Avenue, but you have developer incentives in there. I think that's what the question you were asking, correct? Or am I off with that?
Well, I think that was the question or the point that was being made by the plan commission. Now that as we step back or think about what that discussion was, am I right or wrong then?
Well, no, I think the question that was, I might not have understood you properly with what is there, so can you, if you had developers, say a developer came in right now and said, I wanna develop this certain piece of property and I'm gonna put a $10 million facility in there. And you chose to, they wanna say, well, that's not, I'll start that in 2023. And you had written a document to the state with these costs in it, and you didn't spend any money this year, or you didn't plan to spend any money even on redoing Schofield Avenue. Am I hearing that you have to spend money this year in order to have that not shut down?
I think there's an expectation that if you're keeping the TID open, that there's some expenses and justification to keep it open. I think you have commitments. I don't know, I can ask our finance director what her thoughts would be on that. But the joint review board kind of has some oversight of that as well, and if they see that we're not making expenditures, they could say, hey, what's up here and what are you doing? Why are you not closing?
Yeah, and I just wanna get a clarification on that, because the fact that I think some of the planning commission members agreed that if we have development, let's not redo the roads and find out that our turn lanes are in the wrong spots. So they wanted to, delay that, but if that's gonna be an issue, I think, I'm assuming if that's an issue, that's probably why you called to see if that was gonna be a problem.
Well, I was trying to address the questions as I recalled them from the minutes and from just my memory of how that all went. So I'm hoping that we got closer to an answer anyway. I think the initial response from the Department of Revenue was if you don't have a project plan adopted and you're.
It just has to be a project plan, period.
Right.
So you don't have to spend the money.
Right.
I mean, you're not gonna
Right.
get your hand slapped if it's not spent till 2024.
Right.
But that's in the plan that we're moving towards that. And I'm assuming that's what Michael highlighted there.
Yeah, I guess that's my understanding is if the project plan is amended with added project cost planned.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Right.
Mr. Maloney, do you have a?
Well, if it is amended, it obviously has to have some expenditures in the plan. And if it is amended, how farther out is it 31 then?
2026 is the expenditure
last time you could spend.
sunset.
So,
And I guess, I'll get to this maybe at the end here, so, maybe go to the next slide.
so 26, so you have 4 years, right, to spend the so-called money. But if you didn't do the road, to Gary's point, but you maybe worked with a developer and tore down a building a year to just slowly spend a little bit. But then at the very end, you don't spend for the road, you're not liable to spend that money.
No, there's no commitment to spend any of this money. There's no,
I'm getting closer to understanding this whole thing.
Well, yeah, so my understanding, Mark, and Gary, is that the important thing here is that we make a commitment to fund a project. The reality is, all of our projects, whether we're talking about government or business, there's a significant amount of planning that goes into that you actually have to fund. So in the case of Michael working on what that Schofield Avenue repaving is going to be, a portion of his salary is coming out of that. So we are spending money on this. It's just that we don't necessarily have to commit to start the work until we get to a date that makes sense for what's going on in the Schofield corridor.
Yeah, and again, from what I think I'm hearing is, as long as you have an amended plan, period, you're fine.
that's my.
Or you gotta close it, period.
Right.
And
Okay.
if I may make a comment, since we don't have the Schofield Avenue repaving, from what I understand, repaving is a little confusing to me. We're gonna tear it up and put in new.
Yeah, it's just, we should,
Repaving to me means like putting a thin overlay over. So totally rip out, put in new. So if that's not mentioned in the plan or we don't have further, any development incentives in the plan, we can't do them. Even though we may never choose to use them or do them. If they're not there, we can't use them.
Right,
No
At
different
least
than
that's
we
my
were before
understanding.
with all those other projects, Keith.
right,
They weren't in there, you couldn't have an opportunity to allow them to be put in there.
right. Okay, ready to move on?
I believe so. Sorry to get you off the track.
Okay, so the other concern that was discussed, was how would we market or promote development and redevelopment? So, we talked about the fact that we have some existing partnerships where we could seek other partnerships, and I think one very viable option, which I included a copy of a proposal from a company known as Redevelopment Resources. Principal and CEO of that company is Kristen Fish Peterson, who this firm's actually now based in Madison, but Kristen has roots in the Wausau area and has had a lot of local experience with the city of Wausau as their economic development director back in the day. And she works, I know, with many other developers and communities in this region. So I think it would be a very logical choice perhaps to help us to do some promotion. She has background in real estate and commercial real estate license as well. So would have some capability of, I think, getting the word out that we have some sites that are candidates and so forth. So just certainly not a commitment at this point, but certainly I think a suggestion that I would be strongly in favor of. I think next slide would be, and then in terms of satisfying the but-for test as we look at development incentives or projects that might be eligible. We've talked about this before, and as I had thrown out a bunch of questions to Greg, he just, one of his replies had to do with how do we meet the but-for test. I guess as much as it may not satisfy our desire to have a cookbook arrangement, I think it's really a case-by-case basis, as Greg says, and to quote his email, which I know I have copied you all on, says there's best practices that are followed to demonstrate compliance with the but-for test, but the but-for test can be satisfied in many ways. There's no one size fits all for every project, and especially if incentives are involved. So if we had some experience, expertise to rely upon, say with redevelopment resources, I think there'd probably be some good perspectives on how deals get put together. I think we certainly want to be able to provide assistance on site prep, demolition, you know, with how we structure that, if it's on dollars per square foot of improvement, dollars per square foot of a site. I'm sure there's all different ways we can look at that. Do we consider what the current costs are of construction, which have gone up because of, you know, inflationary pressures and supply chain issues and so forth? I mean, that certainly could be a case made for that being something that should meet the but-for test. So I guess the question ultimately is, what do we want to do?
For Schofield Avenue to meet the but-for test, we're saying that if TIF doesn't pay for it, we're not gonna do it.
That'd be a question for a property owner out there.
For property what?
Well,
A property owner, somebody that wants to buy a site that says, hey, I can't.
I think you're asking about the road,
Oh,
No. No, it needs to be done. I mean, it sounds like it's at its end of lifetime is what.
So
Well, it
if it
needs-
needs to be done regardless, how can that meet the but-for test?
it needs regular maintenance, regular reconstruction for the
Right.
concrete joints.
I understand. My point is that you're gonna do it anyway. You're not relying on, you're not saying that it has to be done to help economic development. It has to be done because it needs to be done. That, it cannot meet the but-for test.
But that's the point, Gail, is yes, it needs to be done, but when? So my contention is that you put it in this plan with the idea that you spend the money to actually facilitate that based on the potential redevelopment customers that you get into the area. And the reality is that funding it with a TIP is gonna be moot as far as the taxpayer is concerned, because the reality is you're gonna pay for it one way or the other. So the but-for is that rather than Michael going forward with his plan, he's gonna fix the road next year. The reality is that maybe fixing the road next year isn't the right thing to do, if in fact we're going to redevelop some property on that. So the longer that Michael waits to do this, the more expensive that project's going to become. There's no doubt about that. But the
But we're
reality is,
stretching the but-for. Let's be honest. Right?
say that again?
We're stretching the definition of but-for because it's the easier thing to do. Because if the TID pays for it, it's easier than if it goes under a regular amortization
No.
of capital improvement.
No, I disagree with that, because the reality is that as you look at prioritizing jobs in the village that Michael would be looking at, I don't necessarily want him to do that next year. Because I want the opportunity to develop Schofield Avenue further before we actually make the commitment to change it.
Mr. Cronin.
I guess that would kind of be my question too, is when would be the time to do that? And how did we come to the conclusion that it needs to be?
So we have a
done?
really short window. Or this TID can only exist for 4 years, Keith? The money has to be expended in 4 years?
Right, it closes in 2031. If we have commitments for spending or, you know,
We have-
debt service beyond that, then those would get paid off by.
Back that up, we have about a 1 or 2 year window for something to happen on Schofield Avenue. And if we don't get somebody in here to help us do something with Schofield Avenue in the next year or two, the reality is we're back into this morass where this thing was formed in 2004 and nothing's happened. Let's get something done. And if we don't get it done, we don't necessarily have to take the money from TID 2 to fix Schofield Avenue. We can decide not to do that and put it on the general tax levy if in fact we can't get any redevelopment to get going in the next 2 years. It's a short window, Gail.
And if it's not done by 2026, it's a moot issue anyway. The TID's done expending. We can't expend past 2026 unless we have a commitment.
So can we maybe go to the next?
Mr. Maloney.
Just a real quick one. I've had several conversations today, and one of the, I had one with one of the commissioners. And the question was, you know, what has Michael done as far as testing? Because we do this, and I talked to Michael, and it's called PACER. Every 2 years, we do a PACER study on all the roads for Weston. And Schofield Avenue came out at 5, possibly 6 years. So it does dovetail right at the end if you did some projects on Schofield Avenue.
So what is can you explain what that is, the
So
PACER?
PACER stands for Pavement and Surface Evaluation Rating. So we rate our roads every 2 years in the village of Weston. Every community in the state of Wisconsin has to do it and submit the data to the DOT. So a 10 road is a brand new road. A 1 is a failed road that is poor. So in general, once a road hits about that 5 range is when we start looking at planning for reconstruction, because the major maintenance that you need to do to beef up a 5 starts outweighing the benefit of the longevity of it. You know, you spend more to make that repair for 5 years, and then you're back at that same grade. So Schofield Ave, depending on what section you're looking at between Normandy and Bird Street, is between a 5 and a 7. So some of those sections we've replaced over the last few years have moved up from a 5 to a 7. You know, so if we spend $200,000 a year, we can take an 1/8 mile stretch of road, replace the failed joints, and bring it up. But due to all the cracking and the wear and tear on it, it's not going to ever get back to a 10 as a brand new road. So you start looking at how many times do you want to make that maintenance gap or that jump before you're looking at a $400,000, $500,000 to just go from a back up to a 7. And it's part of that almost planned obsolescence of our streets. At what point is the maintenance effort no longer worthwhile? And you just kind of let it ride until, knowing that at this point in time, we're going to reconstruct it. It's kind of like a car. Sometimes you get to a point where, you can keep driving it, makes some funny noises, but it's just not worth putting, $1,000 into a car that's maybe only worth 500. So you kind of just let it go, and once it dies, it dies. So we try to do that with our streets and try to incorporate our maintenance plan with our capital plan. So we're not throwing good money that we could be using to keep our other streets highly rated at roads that are poorly rated just for them to fall back down in a few years,
So maybe the most recent example we did on Schofield Avenue, I believe, was all the concrete maintenance or joint repairs and whatnot around the Target entrance down to almost to Birch Street.
Some of the curb and gutter.
Yeah, I mean, over the last, 5-6 years, there's been several sections that have, been in the $100,000, $200,000 range depending on the year. And you try to pick the ones that are failed, and then inevitably the next year, the one that you did joints maybe 1 and 3, and all of a sudden joint 2 fails the following year. So like I said, it's kind of that crapshoot of you can keep chasing your tail on it, but eventually it's going to catch up to us.
All right, so if I may move to the next slide, and then I think we can get to our debate if that's what we want to do.
We still have 2 people that wish to comment on this too.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
That's all right, go ahead. You can finish your presentation.
Okay, so let's move to the next slide here, Michael. So I guess this is I think hopefully cuts to the chase on this whole thing, okay? As the Plan Commission, your main charge is looking at land use and how should the village develop master plan for the village, if you will. So is this proposed project plan amendment consistent with our goals in promoting assisting development in TID 2 and the village overall? Is closing TID 2 now more important than the development and redevelopment opportunities that currently exist and are just going to probably evaporate for 9 years? So, and then going back to the recommendation, if our desire is to amend the plan, then we should proceed, as I said, before making modifications, as quickly as possible to complete this amendment by April 15th. Time's running out. We need to make some get this project plan adopted if that's what we want to do and move on. We can still close it after a year or more if we decide we aren't spending money on anything too. So we don't necessarily have to rush to close it at this point either. So those are my, I guess, my last comments, and I'll take my seat again and we can have debate if that's what we want to do.
Before you take your seat, is there
Okay.
quick questions from any of the commission members? So we can get to the comments from the public.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Donner. I appreciate all the work all the staff has done on this. I know it was a lot of work. Okay, Mr. Pensignol, I think you gave me your slip first. Do you have any comments? Step forward, identify yourself, name and address for the record, please.
Jim Pensignol, 5002 Arrow Street. So I think we all know what TIF is. It's a tool available to municipalities to fund public infrastructure projects to help grow a community, right? It's a great financial tool. Part of that is we funnel some dollars away from, as it was shown up here, from the county, from NTC, from DCRS, from some of these other entities, to keep them here to help and exponentially grow, to kind of supercharge this small geographical area that has been set up. With that, there's a bunch of rules. We talk about them, there's pages of them on the Department of Revenue's website, there's rules and deadlines that we have to meet. But if there's the idea of it from the Department of Revenue's website states that the municipality identifies projects to encourage and facilitate the desired development. And as property values rise, the municipality uses the property tax paid on that development to pay for the projects. After project costs are paid, the municipality closes the TIF. Municipality schools and technical colleges are now able to levy taxes on the value of the new development. So my questions are, what projects have been identified and encouraged to develop and redevelop since the opening of TID 2? We had the Abbey Bank area, some refacing of Ace Hardware, and Associated Bank, a bunch of W's and obelisks and streetscaping and stuff, but none of that stuff is recent. It's 10 plus, 15 plus years ago. In the last 15 years, what have we done? What was the last TID 2 project that was done?
That's the reason the amendment is proposed, because there had not been the ability to have expenditures on.
But we waited 15 years to address that, right?
I think you have to remember there was a change in administration here.
I understand that. I'm just asking, I'm not beating anybody up, I'm just asking the question of.
And I'm explaining, if you're listening, a change in administration that delayed any kind of action that was taken until we addressed the board with this last February.
Okay, very well. So my statement was accurate though, right? It's been quite some period of time since we've had any TID 2 expenditures.
Well, we had done some.
Yes.
Repaving, some maintenance and.
But no redevelopment as the TID was designed.
Right, we have not, but again, we did not have the ability to do.
In the original plan.
Development incentives in the original plan.
Yeah, cool.
Mr. Gare?
I think, Jim, when you put that plan together for the state, you have to give them a detail of what the money's gonna be spent on. And they didn't have anything in there for development. So ultimately, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot if you think you're gonna use it for all streets and improvements for yourself and try to keep off tax base. You may get somebody that wanna develop there or something like that, but you're not gonna, if you need to get.
But you don't have a permission slip to do it. You can't.
Exactly.
And I agree. I think that's great. That's why we're here to change that.
Yeah, so if we wanna do something, we gotta entice it to be done. So ultimately, if I look at this as if I could put $2 in and get $6 back, I'm gonna do it, right? Anybody in this room is gonna do it, right? But we have to have the right people in place to do it. Number one, we have to have the cheerleaders to go out there and sell it. And number two, we have to have planning that's willing to be flexible enough to get something done and move into the community. Granted, we have rules and regulations on Schofield Avenue, but prior to this, they had their hands tied and we had a administrator that had a different vision. He wanted to make his own monster like the one before that, right? That did the Weston Industrial Park. He wanted to have his own little Taj Mahal that costed us, a lot of people, a lot of money. And he heard all the issues and knew about the wetland, but he thought he could beat the system and he failed. So that's what staff has been dealt with, and that's what, if I'm sorry if I've said it wrong, but that's my analogy of it for staff, what they've got to deal with, so.
Yeah, great. No, I agree with most all that you said. I didn't know all of those things, because I don't sit in those chairs, I sit in those chairs. But yeah, I'm just disappointed that it's taken this amount of time. I think it's great that we're all sitting here tonight to change this to, hey, we've got a 4-year window or however we look at the expenditure period. So we gotta move on this now if we're gonna make something happen, but let's do it if we're gonna do it, and if we're not, let's close it and move forward. It was mentioned, well, both tonight, I think it was actually mentioned by you at the last meeting, Gary, about the cheerleader for these projects. And it was in here about having an outside firm. My feelings on that is I think whoever the outside firm is has to have skin in the game. So what's in it for them? They're gonna get paid whether they have development or not, or have their pay based on getting development here or redevelopment here. We're here, we should have skin in the game. All of us are getting paid, we're all community members, we're all staff members, we're all board members, we're all planning commission members. Gosh, I'd really like to see, my neighbor Susie build a whichever, what can we do to get Susie down here and get all the parts and pieces to fall together? There's nothing in it for Rolfer is sitting in his chair, not in Weston. He's gonna get paid no matter what. So having an outside firm do it and not have it done by us, I think that's foolish. We're just throwing money away.
I don't think we are unless we strike the deal with them that they have skin in the game.
Correct.
That's all.
Right. If it's a pay for performance, I'm in 100%.
That's right.
Okay. And then finally, the last thing I had was, I think it's great that we're adding redevelopment dollars or however it's listed in here. But I don't agree with monies for purchasing property. I don't see any parcel on Schofield Ave that the Village of Weston can buy and make money on. The village is not good in the real estate game.
I agree with you, Jim, but the caveat to that I would say is, what if there is a sliver or something that the village can purchase to make something happen, so having it open with the idea that again, we decide what's appropriate. I agree with you that I don't think it's the village job to buy parcels of land. But to have the ability to purchase a sliver of land for some reason could be appropriate.
Yeah, if that's the understanding and intent, then I'm behind it. But hey, let's go buy these 7 parcels and hope they develop, or now we'll sell them to you for lesser dollars. And I don't know if that's a.
Mr. Marnell, you had a comment?
No, he brings up a real good point. When Jim's talking about the developers, that they're gonna have skin in the game. And I know Keith doesn't wanna have, TID 1 or combined with TID 2, but we have to look at what the experience of the village has been with TID 1 and see what happened. We did have developers steer us in a certain direction, which cost a lot of money. We also have had the opportunity to develop land in our TID 1 that staff has not been able to facilitate any national development or any I think it was 5 or 6 years that they had gone to the Chicago things. Nothing came of that. So even though we received this outside source helping us to develop it, it never happened. And I don't think we can ignore it. And although financially they're not related, and I understand that, I still think you got to look at what happened by the way it was being managed. And blaming it on a previous administration won't go so far because nothing's happened since he's been gone either in TID 1. And I don't have any land. I have land that I personally own, and I want to be forthright on there, and I don't want to influence anything in TID 1. I don't own anything in TID 2. And I think we got to be careful on whether we're influencing what's happening there.
Correct.
If we have if we were property owners in that.
It's my understanding, if it's a general issue that applies to everyone, it's appropriate, but if it's specific, getting down to specifics, it's best for you to push yourself away from the table. But, as far as a commitment from the developer that was working with us on the, Ken Phillips Center, they invested in excess of as I recall, $2 million of their own money. So they had big skin in the game, even more than that. So they lost all that because they had, rights to purchase, I understand, that they spent money on, and they held that, they had to pay that for year after year to hold those pieces of property. Yes, they had, was there a problem? Yeah. Did we apply for a permit to the DNR? Yes, we did. They denied it. Part of the reason I think is because it was dealt with by a northern region for the DNR. They didn't understand, this is the largest project that had ever come forward in the state. And I think there was a lack of expertise in that office dealing with these issues.
I don't want to rehash it, but I
Neither do I.
think that the consultants that we're dealing with it are supposed to be the professionals looking out for our best interest also. I'm just saying that it failed miserably and it cost a lot of money. And to think that we could be doing things with our current TID one that we're not, I just don't, there's nothing that's been presented that I've seen that says, hey, this is gonna work on TID two. I'm a believer in.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, should we finish up comments before we continue to debate?
Okay. Are you done, Mr. Pincinel?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gow. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dwayne Gow, 4303 Verlaine Lane, Weston, Wisconsin. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak tonight. I've been a member of this community for about 10 to 12 years. I've also been a member of the Planning Commission for 6 years. I enjoyed being quite extensively. Several of you know me and know me very well and know some of my comments. First of all, let me tell you my background. I'm a professional administrator. I'm retired. I spent 25 years in the public sector as a highway commissioner, public works director, and professional administrator for a small community, smaller than this one. I managed a TIF for over 10 years, 12 years, and the TIF closed within 5 years after I left that community. TIF districts are very difficult to manage. TIF districts are very difficult to understand. First of all, see, I came to Weston because I saw what Weston was. I'm originally from Marathon County. Grew up in Red Mountain. I worked in the southern part of the state. I've been an elected official for a county for 8 years, been an elected official for a township for 2 years. I also served on the planning commission for several of my communities I lived in. And furthermore, I came here because I saw what Weston had. Weston is what I was looking for. It had a plan. I also was here as your highway commissioner in Marathon County when State Trunk Highway 29 came through in the design. This was the town of Weston. And the town of Weston was trying to decide what they wanted to be. They saw what the mistakes were made in the town of Red Mountain. They had interchanges that were clogged. And we also had the change of, you call it Schofield Avenue, at that time was the old Highway 29. I worked at that time, I made a county trunk Highway J, so the community would still have a county trunk. Since I left, other administrators and staff in this community decided to listen to the past, my predecessor, first passed me by post commissioner, and therefore took over Schofield Avenue as your responsibility. And yes, you did get some funds for it. And yes, you did get it upgraded. I know the history. Let's go back to TIF 2. That's what you have on your agenda tonight. Discussion for just TIF 2. I'd hope you stay to that agenda and that portion, because I've seen and sat on this committee where you get off subject. I'm very straightforward, very confident in my discussion with you. TIF 2 that you're going to amend tonight is a very small amendment to that TIF. It's a very small area. I also wasn't here when you did the Schofield Corridor Plan. What you need in this community is first to have economic development and commercial, you have to have rooftops. If you don't have rooftops, you don't have commercial development. You have the rooftops now. You also need the industrial development. So you have the mixture tax base, residential and industrial. To keep the industrial base comes in, your business park, they have their own fire protection, they have a lot of their own security protection. You have very little police calls in that area. You have very little domestic calls in that area. When you end up having those two things, the final thing the community needs is commercial development. Excuse me, I apologize. Commercial development is hard to get. First of all, if you have the mom and pops area, you know, right there, comes in the community and wants to develop a community, you break your back to make sure you get them in the community. Then you have the outsiders that you want to see come to your community. And you have to have areas that you want to be able to show to them in a plan that you want to bring them here to your community. You also have to have a mechanism. It's called a financial mechanism. It's called TIPS. Unfortunately, you had some difficulties with your TIPS. Unfortunately, I have seen experience of difficulties with, I'm not going to mention it, but also TIP 2 has not been able to meet its capabilities. Yes, there has been problems, and it's not just the staff problems. You get new elected officials, you change your elected officials, you get new planning commission members, you all come with a different idea and a different agenda, which is good. You need that. So therefore, this amendment is a small adjustment. It's going to be a few years. It gives you the opportunity to take an area and then to market it to see if you can get some development. And like you heard earlier, once you get development, you don't do a project plan because of development comes. You wait till your development comes in place. And then you know that the increment's going to come in place. And furthermore, incentives are good, but you can be very careful in doing incentive. You can have a good developer agreement to where the incentives are used for, and it's very important how you use them. Use them for development of the infrastructure, parking lots, landscaping, all the infrastructure, maybe into infrastructure, stormwater, et cetera. Be careful you don't put it in the building itself. Then you're stretching your process of where you put that incentive. Very honest with you. I have written quite a few development agreements. Second, you also do not have to commit that project that you say is Schofield Avenue. You have it on your plan, so you're going to. You're not going to guarantee that to a developer. He only knows it's in your plan, and it's if you go forward with it as a community. You're not guaranteeing that plan to them. That's one thing you should realize. You will never do a development agreement saying you're going to guarantee that plan. If you do, you're making a big mistake. So I'm here to tell you, or recommend to you, or plead to you, that you do amend TIF 2 for a short period of time. Take the opportunity to see what kind of development come in that area, which is needed. And then, if development occurs, you have a reason to do your project. Now, when I was doing TIF amendments, or doing TIFs itself, it's going to surprise you. You load the TIF district with a lot of projects, and you load them with the cost. Being that you can then have the flexibility to do what you can do for your community. However, you do not just go hog wild and do the projects. I'll give you a community that I work with and I've done consulting with. I'm a consultant now. Your neighboring community, you know it well. It's Cronerwater. Many years ago, Croner became a village. Croner learned what TIF was. I worked for Croner for 6 years and I'm a consultant for them right now. In that period of time, they did everything to build 4 TIFs, put all the infrastructure in and said they'll come. They didn't come. That community has a difficult time managing their TIFs. And matter of fact, their taxpayers are subsidizing one of their TIFs. So you're not having that here. You have had smart planning, smart consultants, and smart people to help you out. This TIF amendment, in my mind, is very minute. It will give you an opportunity, listen very carefully, an opportunity for one area. Will they come? Only if you have good marketing, like you've talked about. There's many consultants I know, not just the one I mentioned tonight, that does that kind of work. And yes, you put them, make sure they have skin in the game. When we had one in the community I was in, that person would not get a commission unless we got that sale. So it's incentive, just different ways of putting your package together. I'm sorry if I sound a little blunt. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record to some of you. Some of you have seen me before, heard me before. I looked at the minutes of your last meeting. I was totally surprised that that document, that conversation went from TIF 2 to total discussion of TIF 1, total discussion on the building that's being built. You didn't stay on your subject. And that's one thing you got to remember as elected officials or appointed officials. Stay germane to your agenda. People like me see it. There's other people that see it. You wonder why some folks come in here very upset? He has been upset for many years coming here because he only hears certain things, reads certain things. You are, some of your elected officials and some of your appointed. Take those jobs very seriously. Think about what you say and think about the people who come in front of you and ask for a certified survey, a zoning change, etc. You're dealing with their lives. You're dealing with their actual home. And yes, the staff, have rules and regulations and paperwork. How do they get it? From the elected officials over a period of time. You have created their rules and regulations. I'm sorry, I'm getting off the agenda. I apologize, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Are there any plan commission members that have a question or a comment for Mr. Gow? Thank you for your passionate presentation. Anyone else that wishes to speak concerning the TID 2 plan? Social media, Michael?
I don't see anyone now.
Okay.
Tom, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Not on TID, not on.
I just,
But on something else.
okay, sorry.
Further on the agenda. And Mr. Pinson also has comments further on the agenda.
I do. We have more agenda. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, part 2. Okay. Mr. Donovan, do you have a comment?
Just not sure where this is going anymore, but we do need a, I think a direction, a decision tonight from the plan commission that that you're gonna direct staff either to prepare a project plan amendment for a public hearing. That's the next step. So anyway.
So why don't you let me take care of that for you?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
So,
tread on your.
as chair, I'm looking for a motion.
I did have one further question.
You can, pardon?
In the previous plan, you also included multifamily housing as something that you were willing to give developer incentives for.
I don't believe it was multifamily. I think it was mixed use.
Mixed use. Is that still in the current plan?
That would be up to the board.
I think that's part of the redevelopment plan. Let's go for that now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's part of Schofield Avenue's plan, so if the board chooses to fund a project, they could fund a portion of the project. They could fund, helping with sewer and water. That would all, it would depend on the project that comes and ultimately if that cash flows and you want to give money towards it. I mean, it's just listed as development incentives.
I think the consensus or the thought is that planning doesn't want to pay to have somebody develop residential multifamily dwellings, which I understand. But the newest concept that goes on in the bigger communities is gonna be mixed use. They put commercial all along the whole lower level where it can take up the retail area, and they utilize their property and go up with multifamily. Which, you know, we're currently on a huge project down Stevens Point that has 3 high rises, and they're all mixed use. And I would tell you that if they gave money for that project, I'd applaud the city of Stevens Point for doing it, because it's a $25 million project when they're done. And if we want to pass up $25 million project to because it has multifamily above it and it's mixed use, I would probably really struggle on this planning commission. I really would.
So part of when we were talking about the Schofield Avenue plan, you kept hearing that you needed to have bodies that are gonna keep
Yes.
viable target and keep it there. You're gonna need people to be around. So that's why the mixed use is being used. You want people that are close by. I mean, it's gonna help to have Kennedy Park Nursing Home is now basically apartments. You're gonna have people that'll be able to walk to that area. And just, you want to have people around in order to keep some of your bigger things and even your smaller restaurants around in that area.
Yeah.
Mr. Crowley?
Where is that? You said that Kristen Fish, does she live in Wausau, or is she based out of Madison?
That's not Madison, no.
I mean, I'm not crazy about having another consultant that's based out of Madison.
Well, I don't think that's a definite, person.
And I understand that, I get that,
I'm not gonna say anything about it, and maybe Dwayne can step in with this comment as well, but I don't know that they have to be positioned in our community to do that, because they've got developers calling them. I know that several of them that have developers calling them from all over the country, asking them what municipalities are open with TIF right now, where the projects are at, send me maps, send me this. And then they review that, right? They review that and they take that to, I mean, we do a lot of stuff with Raleigh, and Raleigh is looking for that. Raleigh takes that to all of his money men, and that's how he sells it to them, right? Which he's done a lot of development, not just in our community or Wausau or surrounding areas. He's done it in Clover, he's done it in California. He does it all over the place. Illinois, those guys are movers and shakers, and they go to their core group of people that they call, and that's their job. They work with different communities throughout the states, and they know where there's market funds for them to bring in a big project for them, because they have TIF money. So that's their eagle eye right now, is where they're going to is incentive to help a project through, to get it going.
You know, Gary, don't you think we need to have our arms around what those incentives are gonna be? I mean, I'm looking right now, if this is the project that was approved back in 19 in Stevens Point, it appears that they're getting $5 million, $3 million from the city and $2 million and $2.5 million from the TIF to finance those buildings for mixed use. And my point is that's 20% of the project.
You got a different situation there. That was all contaminated soil.
Wasn't that, is that a
So
It's a lullaby.
all of that, we had to haul all that material off-site to a landfill. So there was a lot of money that got put up there to cover the infrastructure cost to make it a buildable site for DNR side of it. So that's why there was so much money.
Is that a project, almost like a project-specific TID created just for that project even?
I can't answer that. I don't know enough about it. I just know there's 3 large buildings, and then there's gonna be, buildings all the way around it for rental.
I think they used the university to master plan it too.
Yeah, we're not being that specific with this.
No.
No, and the incentives, whatever type of arrangement you have is up to is to be negotiated, you know.
Right. Developers are gonna come in asking for $2 million for a $10 million project. It's up to us to say, you know, I shouldn't say us, because we don't have that. Staff or board is gonna say, you know, what's our ROI on it? The person that you're working with is gonna tell you exactly, there's a formula that you use, exactly how much money can be spent for that project in order for it to cash flow. So all that stuff is in place that we don't get to see right now, or we're not educated on. they can't just give that money away if it's not gonna have an ROI for the municipality. It's just, and Dwayne can speak on that as well. It just, you cannot give that money away knowing that it's gonna be backwards for the municipality or the taxpayer.
The board has to make that, just make those decisions.
And there's
correct?
quite a paperwork mess that you have to go through to do it.
The other issue is if we have a specific project, the developer that comes in, hey, I want some money for this, and all of a sudden it falls through, and we have it specifically outlined in our plan, that's kind of putting handcuffs on us that we can't, how can we tell a year from now, even 6 months from now, what projects are gonna come to us? You can't tell. Next week, Jen could get a call from somebody, hey, I wanna put in a 5-story mixed use. What are the incentives that we can have? I mean, we've had discussions about some of them, in fact, that one on Camp Phillips Road that you've talked about in the past. That's a big project, that's a lot of money and a lot of increment. But I think if you wanna have a detail, we're gonna provide funding for this project, mom and pop grocery store.
Keith,
We're in bait shop.
You can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. So Keith, I'm gonna ask you a question. If you remember or recall, what is the percentage of the project cost that has to be, is it 20% of the cost of the total project? Or is it 17? I just can't recall that.
30 or 33.
What is it?
30 or 33.
Max?
Yeah.
I just can't.
How about what we put in like in our policy guideline, which.
And you know, the board, when they bring this application that gets brought in, guys, they're gonna, if they see that it's automatically, they went to the max percentage right away, you negotiate off that. They're gonna try to go for the most they can get, and then you negotiate off of that. And it's really up to our board to hold them accountable for it. So if we get a $20 million project and they ask it for, $5 million, they can't even ask that much anyway, because on the
No, but there was
application.
the one that I've seen about a year ago that Keith shared with me. Paid him $100,000 to manage, the construction site for his project. Paid him another $100,000 to come up with his plans. I mean, it was like $500,000 that was being paid to the individual to develop it. And I looked at it and I said, well, how would we even consider something like this? Even if that's a starting point for negotiating off of, I'm not comfortable doing a $20 million project under that scenario. I'm just not. I don't think the staff is able to handle it. I don't think we've had enough exposure to those things. I don't think that we're able to hire consultants to look out for our best interest right now. I just don't see that.
I believe we have the capability of doing that. I really do. And I think we have the capability of doing that with putting some skin in the game, as long as we have our staff and planning is gonna be helpful enough to get that pushed through. And when I say that, I'm not saying this in a mean way, gals. I'm just telling you that we've had a past history that we are bad to work with, right? It takes forever to get anything through. That's what we're gonna fight against right now. But if we can't overcome that, then we're not gonna get somebody that's gonna wanna work with us and put them on a commission base, because they're gonna say, well, I'm gonna do a deal here, but then I get it shot down because I can't get it through the final end. I'm gonna quit working for you guys. We don't need that. That's what we don't need, right? So,
There's nothing, I haven't seen anything that shows that we're gonna be able to change that. I'm just saying, whether it's security cameras on new apartments being built, or whether it's, the requirements for putting a bike rack in at a car repair place. I'm just saying that those
we have
are,
the ability to do that. It's just us taking the time to.
I understand that, but it doesn't happen until we bring it up.
Yeah, because it's a code that they're given, which I understand now. It's a code that they're given, that they're having to follow. That, again, I'll bring up, sorry, Mark, but I'll bring up this guy's name. And that's, I did it last meeting, was Dean Zuliger. He put the TIF in there. He rammed all these businesses in there, which, great. I think it was awesome. There ain't a building out there that I don't think serves its purpose, right? That looks like crap, or it's not upholding its thing. Jen was told to stay the hell out of there, stay out of his plate. Don't get your nose into this and don't muck this up. So Jen couldn't hold anybody to that code, right? So now he's gone. The new administrator says, BS, we're gonna bring some people from Madison and now everything's gonna be by the book. Well, that's what happened to our community is all the developers went, holy shit. We got issues, right? I don't wanna deal with this community. They're asking for all these requirements and this never was like this before. They're most difficult to deal with. WAS is easier to deal with. So we put them in a position of that and our staff or administration has done that to them, right? So somehow I know we've struggled with this. Our planning commission has struggled with this over the years. How do we get this back to making this easier to push through, easier to do without being, not everything is, you're gonna holler at me.
No, I'm not. I'm just clearing my throat.
So anyway, I'll be done with that. I don't know.
I just wanna make a little point here. Consideration for the ETZ group.
Yeah.
And I know 3 of them are here, but 3 of them aren't, our great neighbors, town of Weston. This should have been put up in front of these kind of things. I'm saying this to staff.
I was gonna actually.
We should have definitely done that, and then if we see people here, put them up, but there's just no reason that they have to sit here for an hour and a half, and we're still going. So either we stall this conversation, do the 2 open hearings for them, let them leave, and then go back to this conversation, or.
I was gonna ask that.
I'm just telling you that.
I was gonna ask that when Keith started talking, but I didn't.
We can actually delay a further discussion on this till after we clear up other items on the agenda.
I think that would be a good idea. I think everybody needs to take
It's all gotta think about it anyway.
Can we make a motion to, hold off on, or stop our,
It can be done by consensus.
oh,
Yeah, let's table it
Table it.
later in the meeting.
A motion is tabled by Cronin.
Sure.
Second by
Karen?
Karen. The table until later in the meeting. Remind me that we have to bring it up, we need a motion to take it off the table later in the meeting.
Okay, we need 9 and 10 done, right?
Okay. Gosh. Good discussion though. Public hearings.
Sorry, Randy.
Bachelor's on at 8.
Item 9, zoning map amendments, conditional uses and related requests. An ordinance to update chapter 14, building regulations, and make related amendments to chapter 34, fire prevention and protection, chapter 74, subdivision regulations, and chapter 94, zoning. This is PC and ETZ. I'll open the public hearing. Presentation by staff. We'll get to them.
So, we are bringing this back to you. I made a few changes based off some things that I received from Lauren. I received a call from Roy too. He had some questions on the addressing, section, in regards to, the multifamily addressing, which is on page 34 of the document. So there was something added there, regarding the numbering sign, the size numbers being done at basically through the site plan approval process. Just because you don't want to set a number, our multifamily can be, like in the case of the ones on Callan Avenue, where they look more like duplexes, those would have something that are more like a regular address number. And the ones over here on the corner of Ryan and Schofield Avenue where they're larger because they're further away from the building. So there was just that put in, but essentially, I also made some changes. We had talked about that telecommunications, just fine tuning that. So there are some, changes to that. And then Lauren made some additional, just.
I found additional places where it might.
Where it might be relevant. So that was added.
And a definition in the definition.
So basically, I guess for the public, we have been working on this for a number of years. It needs to be updated essentially because of it being part of our building code, just some fine tuning more for processes on how we were actually doing things. They were not listed on how Scott and Roman were actually doing their building inspections, just because this code had really never been updated. There was a lot of sections, references to state statutes that needed to be updated. And then this one also does house our address numbering. So we needed to make some changes to that. That started way back to when we were going to be part of the county's addressing upgrades. So that was like 3 years ago. But essentially, we just made some fine tunes to that and changing some of the numbering styles. And also putting a provision in there if someone wants to not have the flag signs that are required. So, I don't know if Scott wants to put any additional info, because most of it is regarding building inspections, which is his category, not mine.
Any plan commission?
Corrections that were brought up the last time.
Yep.
Some verbiage that was actually outdated, so we put the state statutes in there.
Any questions from plan commission or ATZ members of Jen?
It's not creating any additional permits. That would come through the village board through the schedule of fees. So nothing
Thank you, Dwayne.
being changed.
Thank you.
Mr. Rydell, you had a comment?
I have a question on, I believe it's page 101 of the 217 in our presentation here, under item, I guess it's 94.1610. It says no part of any building or building addition or site can be used for any purpose until a certificate of occupancy is issued. And then above that, there's also, it says no vacant land shall be used or shall be occupied or used, and no building premises shall be erected, altered, or whatever. Until a certificate of occupancy is issued. Do we really want to say no vacant land shall be occupied or used? I mean, my neighbor, has cattle, it's vacant land, are we regulating that? Or should we clarify that a certain way? You follow what I'm, you can make it sense?
Yeah, it's just a standard, so a lot of this is standard language that you would see in any of the code. So we only would be doing something with it if someone came to us and asked that question. Like if it's a vacant piece of property and they were gonna change the use on it. So so we're not gonna give them an occupancy permit to put their cows there.
Well, how do we clarify that? That is what I meant. I read this and I spent time reading it and I looked at it and I said, that seems kind of odd.
A lot of the way that the zoning code is written is so that you can, if the issue comes up, you can address it. Because if it's not there, you can't. So if that makes sense. So if somebody goes and sets up, so say we actually had a case where somebody was running like motocross on a vacant piece of land. That's changing the use of it, and that's not an allowed use of it. So in order for them to basically turn it into that, they would have had to get some type of a permit, and at that point, we would say that that's not an allowed use. So some of it is used for the enforcement aspect of it on the other end. So if it becomes an issue, you have the ability to enforce it.
Also, Steve, at the top of page 101, there's a sentence that says this subsection does not apply to any approved temporary use or agriculture use. So it wouldn't apply to the cattle.
Okay, so I got 21 acres and it's not agricultural, so I can't do anything with it without getting permit?
Can't have motocross.
Well, we still have to meet with the zoning.
Maybe that's it, I guess, I don't know.
Or
Can't have
snowcross either.
You can't have a Woodstock festival on it either.
I'm just saying that when I read it, it's like, oh, that's odd. That struck me as very odd.
You still have to meet the zoning. So if your 20 acres is on commercial, you're not gonna be allowed to have cattle anyway. But if it is an ag where it is permitted to have ag uses, then the ag use theoretically wouldn't need the certificate of occupancy.
Oh, it just seems odd. I just pointed it out, it just seems odd. Yeah?
Scott, I believe that at last meeting you said that we simply follow state statutes, and Jen said that this is addressing more of our processes, is that right? Because if we simply follow state statutes, why can't we just say we follow state statutes?
We have to adopt those state statutes in the building codes.
Okay.
And then they're set up with the procedures, the state doesn't dictate on how some of the procedures are done, but the codes that the builders, the electrical plumbers, everybody follows those codes. But the procedures of getting the permits and the land uses are kind of spelled out in that building code area.
Have we made an attempt to be as flexible or to make our processes easy to deal with? Because like you said, we're hearing that we're difficult to deal with. So has there been an attempt to make our processes streamlined in this code?
I would say that they're pretty streamlined because you apply for a permit online. You can come in here, I mean, you know, whatever you want to do, we're pretty easy to, you know, deal with on those.
I guess the comment I had heard, and it was before the public hearing, was that we require a lot more surveys than other communities.
Surveys?
Surveys.
I mean, surveys are required if you're gonna redo your land, I guess, lay out your parcels, but, we during a, you know, say you're putting up a fence, it's a good idea to get a survey.
So you don't put it on the right of way or your neighbor's
We've already
property?
had people put them up in the wrong spots, so, you
So
know.
are
it's not-
surveys required versus optional?
It's up to, we say you should find your pins or have a survey, but as long as you're gonna put it on a plan that this is where it's gonna be, later on, then it's a civil matter.
Okay.
It's between you and your neighbor if you put the fence on the wrong part.
And Scott has found a home that was built, too close to the lot line. You remember that one? Out in,
I forget, there's so many.
off of
We even found a
Oh, I
lot
thought it was
that-
Dominica Street.
Oh,
a lot that isn't owned by anyone.
There's others too.
But there's two garages right side by side on this lot that's not owned by anybody. And it's
Thank you.
like, I don't even wanna deal with that until, that's gonna be a civil issue.
Okay. We're still on 9B, is that correct? Emily, are you keeping me on track? Okay, anything else? Public comment period? Tom's is on the signs, and that's in the next one. Jim, you had comments on this part of it too? You said chapter 94?
I did. Jim Penstone, 5002 Arrow Street. I can't see if it is on this one or not, but the one that I looked at online, where it's on the second line in that paragraph, it should say a certificate of occupancy, not an certificate of occupancy.
4.8.
Not sure if that N is stricken or not, but in the copy that was published online, it was not stricken, so it should say a certificate of occupancy.
A certificate, it says.
Yeah, so if it's stricken here and it's fixed now, great, but it was not fixed online. I don't have access to
The
it.
N after the A is crossed out.
Then it's right. It should say a certificate. And then in the section 14.7.03 telecommunications, I know I mentioned this before, I wasn't at the last meeting, but 2 meetings ago. I see some of that clarification has happened, but part of the clarification, I think, created more confusion because it states standard residential receiving antennas. So what about something that sends a signal, like a wireless router or wireless access point that sends and receives a signal? So if I buy a new router, I'm supposed to get a permit? But that's not what it calls out. It says receiving antennas.
I think further on down, it has another definition about some things like Ring doorbells.
That's in this paragraph, Lauren. It says ring doorbells are excluded, and then it says receiving antennas. It says nothing about sending. So what about Bluetooth devices? Can a resident pair their Bluetooth speaker with their phone? That sends and receives, that's not just receiving. What about cell phones? Are they excluded? Vehicles, cars and trucks, if a truck, be it commercial or civilian with a CB radio, that will send and receive a signal. So do we need a permit for a CB radio? What about just a car, right? So your car, you push the blue OnStar button. Cars have tens of data systems in them. You've got radar, sonar, wireless and wired networks. Are they excluded, or can we call them out? Can we address that so it's not a question? I don't need a permit to park my car in my
I
garage.
don't know if those would fall under building code though, the more I was thinking about this.
I think if you start calling out individual devices, you're gonna be short, as technology develops, you're gonna be out of date the minute you print it.
I agree. That was another statistic that I had on here is that I don't have the 2020 census data, but I have it from 10. And it was written in the packet that this hasn't been updated since the 90s. So that's 30-ish years ago, right? I'm gonna go from the 10 census data. So 49.1% of village residents are 34 years old and younger. So the last time this was looked at, half of our residents weren't even born. We should be gradually changing with the times, not scrambling to catch up. Look at your car 30 years ago, look at your telephone 30 years ago. It changes a lot. So we gotta come back here more often. Like a MyQ enabled garage door, you can run your garage door from your phone. That sends in, receives. That's not addressed in here. So just something to think about. I don't know if that's important to the staff, but.
It is an issue. It is.
These are all,
Just strike the telecommunications right out of it.
or remove telecommunications completely. That's
easy enough to do.
That might be,
Or just add telecommunications used for commercial purposes.
that it's, I think you're opening a can of worms with that too.
Except how about people that work from home? All of a sudden, they're doing their job from home. Now is it actually a commercial purpose?
I think the intent was to telecommunications on large scale, like the cell towers and things like that.
Also the neighborhood, the boosters that you see. You see them every so often on a power pole, you see these neighborhood Wi-Fi boosters.
Those are actually relays for.
Relays.
Yes, we did.
Problem with intent, if it doesn't specifically say it, it doesn't matter what you intended, somewhere, 10 years down the road, someone's gonna interpret it differently. Not trying to beat anybody up with that statement, I'm just being honest.
Here it talks exclude standard residential receiving antenna, security camera and or doorbell system, energy generating devices that are integral to a yard light. So even went down to the little bitty yard lights, the solar powered yard lights.
So it says receiving antenna. It says nothing about sending. So that MyQ garage door, can't open that garage door. You can receive the signal, but don't you be sending a message from your phone to open the garage door.
I'm pretty sure there was gonna be cops at your door to arrest you for that.
Well, I know
They're right now. I
but,
can see it on camera.
for Jim's point though, we correct spelling. Now, obviously, the intent of a misspelled word, we all know what it means, but yet we're still correcting it. So to his point, he's got a point, and I've heard Scott say it 3 times, let's just take telecommunications out.
Take it out.
Take it out.
You seriously wanna talk about this for another hour?
No,
Okay.
take it out.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, I've heard him say it 3 times.
But that would be in a motion after we're done with the hearing. Any other public comment period?
Can you tell us to take it out?
Anybody on social media? Mike? No? Any other plan commissioners have any other comments, public comments? Can't make it, but I'm just gonna ask. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Recommendations from staff?
We recommend approval.
Okay,
I thought for sure you guys were gonna recommend it.
you're next.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
If someone's.
who's talking? Bill is on.
Somebody's on Zoom?
Okay.
This is Mark Hull on
Okay, Mark.
Zoom. I have a couple things. I'm not sure, I'm not quite following how you're handling this, but I guess I have a couple of nits I wanted to point out and also one substantive issue on the if we look at, the draft ordinance, I'll go by the sections on the draft ordinance. That's probably the easiest. So I'm looking at the draft ordinance to update chapter 14 and 34 and 74 and 94, that document, the proposed ordinance.
Oh, the ordinance at the end. That one. Is that the one, Mark? If you're seeing the screen?
I cannot see the screen.
Go up one.
He's on phone.
Oh.
He's on phone.
I'm looking at ordinance number 22-001, proposed ordinance on page 98 of 217 of the material.
Okay.
Are you talking about ordinance number 22-001?
Correct. Okay,
And
I have
Mark,
nothing on,
And Mark, this would fall under the discussion and recommendation by the ETZ then, if you wish to take it that way. Hello? Is he still there?
yes. Before there were recommendations by staff, I wanted to point out some errors or some nits and something substantive I found in the draft. So I don't know if you want me to do it now or to wait until after you have a motion.
You can do it, it's under F, it's discussion and recommendation to the board of trustees by the ETZ committee. You are on the ETZ, so you can make discussions and recommendations under this.
Do you want me to proceed now?
Yes.
Okay. On page 2, section 3, under the proposed draft of 74.604, there I think might be an additional comma that needs to be deleted after the word certified survey map. Just something to see. On page 3, section 5.
Everything is struck out, yeah.
Struck out, Mark.
Except for it says street name.
Yeah, street name, but
I think there may be a stray comma there. I just wanted to point
That's
it out.
Andy.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Section 5 on page 3, section 94.8.13, certificate of occupancy required. In paragraph 1 and in paragraph 3, there are still references to a permit in lowercase after you have now defined it as the certificate of occupancy. So you refer to such permit shall show, such permit shall be applied, and such permit shall show.
Should have corresponding terminology.
So you might want to change permit to certificate.
I see it twice in paragraph 1.
I don't see it in 3, maybe.
I see it at least once in 3.
Oh, yeah, such permit also, I see it.
In section 6, you're referring to 94.13.02 sub 8 sub A being amended. This is later amended in the next public hearing section on signs, and as drafted here, sub A does not correspond and is not the same as what is in that section in the next public hearing. In other words, we're asking for a change to this section here, and then in number 10 of the agenda item, we will be asking for a change again to this exact same section, and the sections are not the same.
Jen and I had talked of that, and this one would be the verbiage to go with. It was because they are two totally separate codes and this is addressed. This one would be the one that would trump depending on if this went through, but signs didn't. So for when we get to signs code, we would just.
Substitute the language that's here for the one that's in the sign.
Mhm.
But that would have to be in the motion.
Correct.
I could not go in and adjust hers based off of the new sign, the new Muni code system. It locks her,
Because she touched the file the last time.
so I was
Great
not
system.
able to, actually, I have to go in and do all this after it gets adopted, so.
I just wasn't sure which one you wanted. I thought it was this one, but I just wanted to point out it is not consistent and you would need to definitely make them consistent however you need them to be.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mark, or calling it out.
So I think whoever makes the motion would have to call that out, Mark.
On page 4, what section are we talking about here? I'm sorry. Section 7, page 4, in 94-16-10, the sub 2 that's on page 4, in the bold there, in the heading, it's application for certificate of occupancy permits. And I'm not sure if that's consistent or if permit should be deleted now that you're calling it a certificate of occupancy. You're talking about the zoning and the building permits there, but I think that you now have redefined the certificate of occupancy and you don't need the permits there. It's something for you to verify.
It makes sense, to me, that makes sense if we're striking it from other portions and having cross references, certificate and permits, one should be deleted.
I agree.
I thought it should be struck, but
There's another word
Point it
permit
out.
in that paragraph 2 also.
Different kind of
yeah,
permit,
but
though.
that one's correct. Those
It's a
are
zoning
correct
permit.
because they're talking about the zoning and the building permit there. So those references are correct.
Okay.
It's just in the header.
Next
And
one,
then
Mark.
the final thing I had is on page 5 and it's section 12. And I was just curious, in the second sentence, we talk about the director of planning development's directed to prepare a second amendatory ordinance once approved by the ETZ. But then it says it would make the amendments in sections 6 through 11 applicable in the ETZ. And when I look back at the sections that we just went through here, are you sure it's 6 through 11 and it's not 4 through 11? I guess I wasn't sure if you're not applying all of it to the ETZ. I just wanted to make sure you were getting the right sections you wanted in there. And when I looked at it, I thought maybe you
Four
were
is correct.
trying to exclude 1, 2, 3.
Where are we? Should say 4 through 11, correct?
Yes.
Is anybody keeping a list of all this? This is gonna be one heck of a motion.
I want to see which one of you guys wants to make the first motion.
Who's been taking notes?
Joe?
I wrote down what they are, I will remember.
Gonna make, anything else, Mark?
That's all I had.
Really?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Why?
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Takes the heat off of me.
Can't believe you missed those.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
What the heck, Lauren? Flipping or what?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any changes?
So, you as, Milt is here.
How do you want to make that motion?
Oh, yeah, that's really good. So you probably could, oh, I'm not the chairman, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Is there a motion to recommend or approve this to the Board of Trustees?
This is from the ETZ. What are they gonna?
Yes, I'll
with
make
changes.
that motion with those corrections.
Is there a second?
Okay. Go ahead.
I got a motion on the floor to recommend this to the Board of Trustees. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion to recommend this to the Board of Trustees with the corrections that were talked about, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. It'll go to the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
I guess a thought, does that include removing the telecommunications?
I wouldn't.
I would assume.
I would assume all
Comments,
corrections.
okay. I just wanted to
Okay.
clarify.
Item G, discussion and recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the Plan Commission.
I move to approve the changes to chapter 14. Yeah, subject to all the changes outlined.
You could have it approve the ordinance 22-001, and that includes all of the changes.
Be the building regulations. Yeah, all those.
This is what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Yes.
With the modification.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance number 22-001 with all the modifications set forth in tonight's discussion.
I'll second.
Motion by Colonel, second by Mumford.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Item 10, an ordinance amending section 9413, signs within chapter 94, zoning of the municipal code. This is PC and ETZ. I'll open the public hearing. Presentation by staff.
All right, so taking comments from last meeting, Lauren submitted some formatting questions as well. So Lauren, some of your formatting questions is just the way the ordinance downloaded in terms of like extra spaces and whatnot, so.
It was mostly typographical and clerical things.
Couple boldings and whatnot. I didn't understand your latest thing you dropped off this afternoon.
I can't see from here. Are you kidding?
So if you have any further comments, that didn't make it in. But yeah, not much has changed since the last meeting. So any questions, comments? We added 60 days for temporary signs.
But not the temporary signs on non-residential zone property, that didn't get changed.
Because that verbiage is only on residential. Because there's a difference between temporary signs on residential and temporary signs on commercial.
My intent was that it would be on both temporary signs. The
Residential and commercial.
residential and commercial. I think it's listed 30 twice. It's number 3. Temporary signs on non-residential zone property.
Where'd my residential one go? Did that disappear? So from discussion, we were only discussing it as a residential. We can definitely add it to non-residential if you wish. The big thing with doing it on non-residential is, remember, we can't regulate based on context. So if you're trying to do it around an election period, that allows them to put up whatever signs, Subway for sale, or, $5 subs, as many as they want for that 60-day period. So just pointing that out, we can differentiate between zoning districts. Residential is usually where
You are limiting not to exceed 64 square feet. So you can't put up as many as you want.
But that's what you were just asking.
No, I was just saying that I would prefer that it be 60 days rather than 30 days. The change was made to the residential zone property, but not the non-residential zone.
Okay, so you're just referring to the 30 in general, not specifically the time frame around an election period.
Right, 60 days overall.
Got it, okay, yes. If that is also how Plan Commission wishes, we can make that change.
And then my question is, it says a sign permit shall be required for temporary signs serving this purpose. Does that include the political signs?
So that's the next sentence. Smaller signs of no more than 6 square feet shall be limited to 2 signs per frontage. with no permit required right there in that next sentence.
Okay,
So if your
it's
sign is less than 6 square feet, I can't regulate based on if it's political. If it's less than 6 square feet, would not require, but if it's larger, would require a permit.
So does that need to be changed because that says 30 consecutive, I see 30 days twice.
It's not very big.
I was gonna say your average sign in a commercial property is a 4x8 sign, a political sign. So I think we could run into some problem with charging people for their political speech.
So not an issue if you're doing it for all signs.
For fall signs.
All signs, so if you're evenly doing it, it's not discriminatory.
I have a problem with charging people to exercise their political speech. I
So
don't
you
know if
keep
anyone
saying
else.
political though, but we can't regulate based on content, and I get what you're saying, but we can't call out political specifically from a freedom of speech.
What's the point of the $25 one-time sign use charge?
It's keeping track of temporary signs that are around the village, staff being aware that they're out there, making sure that they don't exceed that 64 square feet, so someone's not putting a 90 square foot sign out there, keeping an idea of timeline that when they were put up, so that we can keep track of that 30 or 60 days.
Does that go to help wanted too? Help wanted? Help wanted signs?
Right now, we're taking a loose field,
I
but
know
yeah,
that, but it's all or nothing.
yeah, it is all.
Yeah, you can't,
Help wanted, we will never control this.
So a sign bigger than 6 square.
Biting something off here that we'll never be able to enforce, ever.
How are we gonna enforce
On
that?
help wanted, never happened. If we're talking all, I'm just telling you. And I could drive around this village right now and I could show 50 offenses easily on what we're talking about right now. A 2x3 is 6 feet square. That is a very, very typical, $150 for 100 signs for political. Anything more than that, you gotta get a $25 ticket. I mean, oh my God. I'm just telling you right now.
It's a can of worms.
You won't be able to call,
It's a can of worms we're gonna
he will
open
not
up.
help you here.
So we could change the size and say, if a sign is smaller than 32 square feet, you don't need a permit.
Help me with my math. What is?
4x8 would be 32.
4x8.
Which is a very common,
4x8 sheet.
or you could do 24, or,
Should be no greater than 32.
Yeah.
Because if you say 32 feet, it can't be, then it's exactly. Somebody's gonna come up with one that's 32.25 square feet.
Well, if we have time to measure it, then so be it. I think 32 is fair. I really do.
It counts both sides of that sign though, correct?
No.
So if you're
one side that you.
Joe for village president, on both sides, that's 64 square feet.
Nope, there's a definition that explains how square footage is calculated, and it's the side that you can see at one time. So you look at one side of the sign, that's 32 square feet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So-
No, it's like.
So it's 32 on, like,
8 by 11 sheet
32 on
of
this
paper would
side.
be 88 inches.
Blank on the page.
Right, yeah, I got you.
That's good math there, Steve.
Thank you.
Deal, that, yep, 32.
Yes, 32 is fine, if we can.
I think so.
So the sign permit will be only required when greater than 32 square feet.
Yeah, I like greater.
I'm in agreement with that.
I agree.
are you okay with that?
So looking at that verbiage, so the verbiage right now is smaller signs of no more than 6 square feet. So my theory would be change it to smaller signs of no more than 32 square feet shall be limited to, and it's currently 2 signs per street frontage.
That's the equivalent of 64 square feet you could have.
That's a lot, should it be changed then to
That would cover
1?
both sides of a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Right, but it depends on how big your lot is, I mean,
How many properties really can put that up?
Well, some people might have 10 acres, one parcel.
Yeah, then it's not enough. Yeah.
along Highway 29.
Yep.
We can't get.
I personally think
29 though.
2 is fine.
This has been so much fun. I say we do it with 2 and we get to do it again.
Exactly, it's a living document.
Couple months.
I'd be here in line, an hour ahead of time.
Hey, we're, as far as I understand it, we're still on presentations by staff, is that correct?
Yes.
Or did I lose my place again?
While we're here though, can I just confirm, are we switching 30 days to 60 commercial?
Yes,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we get consensus.
yeah, I see, I think there's 2 spots in number 3 that I see 30 on.
Got them. Okay. Finishing my presentation, that's all. Yes,
That's
just make corrections and further corrections. So any other things that Plan Commission sees that they wish to tweak, and then any further motion just needs to recognize that addressing portion from the last ordinance.
Okay. So are we done with presentation from staff?
Sure.
Okay. Public comment period. Tom? Address for the record, please.
Tom Salzman, 227-521 Lar Avenue. One of the things I'd like to talk about is how we're gonna enforce some of this stuff and who's actually gonna enforce it. We talk about the police department. One of the things the police department was started as is a standalone department that doesn't become political. And I've seen the police department being used as a political pawn on some issues. And I won't get specific because that's gonna take too long. One of the legal things is, as a government, we can't go on people's property and take down their signs. So how do we regulate this stuff? One of the manners I want to try to talk about is to regulate things. And it can be more than just the signs issue, but you can send out letters and you can send out fines and you can put all kinds of penalties in place. But one of the biggest things I've ever seen work is when you have to stand 2 people, the municipality and somebody, a property owner or somebody in front of a neutral judge. And one of the ways to do that is you send out a letter. You have the, if no response to the letter or the response to the letter isn't what you want to see happen under the authority of the law, then you order the people to come together with an order to show cause hearing. This order to show cause hearing puts the 2 people together in a neutral place before a neutral judge. And then that process, I've seen it work many times because now the people stop becoming advocates or angry with each other because I can talk about lots of times, and I'll just use the one where if you have a 911 call and if you abuse the 911 call, they take you into court. So, well, what about disabled people who are mentally disabled? Well, when you bring that mentally disabled person in front of a 911 call dispute, they realize that they're in front of a judge and they change what they're doing. The same as, I'll just take, right now, I don't want to get off the subject of signs, but you got the property on Newport Street. If that person was brought in before there was penalties and fines and police departments in front of a neutral position of an order to show cause hearing, that person would help to fix what's going on over there. So when we look at these signs, we can't be enforcing it with police. The Everest Metro can be a part of it, but I think to enforce some of this, we need to we can't be going on property and taking signs and we can't be fining people huge amounts of fines until there's some enforcement that is bringing the people forward to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So, and I can give all kinds of examples through the years, everything from Wausau's problems and, we got, you can bring in the Savo Supply building downtown that Wausau gave orders to have it torn down, and well, now Wausau owns it and they're building apartments in it. But and Roger Hepner with the town of Stettin, and all these other things that happened, all of those could have been easily solved if they would have brought the parties together before they got entangled with paperwork with staff and fines and police departments. And so we need to look at how we're gonna enforce this is my main topic tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Are there any questions? Mr. Sullivan? Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Anyone else wish to speak in favor, or in opposition? Jim again?
Well, good evening, Jim Penso, 5002 Earl Street, Weston. Flags, if you can pull the flag section, I think it's a couple up. It says flags of less than 18 square feet in area. What's the intent of our restriction on flags? Like a standard issue flag that we've got flying out here is 3x5. Steve, help me out with the math.
15.
There you go, 15 square feet, right? So a standard issue flag is 15 square feet. So can I have 2 of those? Can I have 10 of those? What about a 4x6 sign? So a 4x6 flag. So that's the next size bigger. Generally, if there's 2 flags on a pole, they'll both be 3x5s. If there's 1 flag on a pole, it'd be a 4x6. So do I need a permit for a 4x6 US flag?
So I pulled 18 off of just a general US flag sizing. If Planning Commission wants to allow larger sizing, that totally is fine.
Why are we even limiting flags?
We're not, it's to explain what flags are under the signs allowed without permits. So that's where that section is you're referring to. So it's to give a definition of what a flag is, just fleshing that out a little bit more. As seen with NACWA this past year, flags were kind of used in a banner sort of manner. So trying to separate out flags from banners from a type of material standpoint. So that's where that was going. A flag that's from this past year, a flag that's attached to a deck, is it really a flag or is it more of a banner in that case since it's not on a flagpole?
So if the size of the flag exceeds 3x5, if it's a 4x6 US flag, I need a permit for that, correct?
That's how it's written. We can totally increase that to 4x6, 24 square feet.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
would it be possible that we could just have exactly that language, except it excludes anything to do with the US flag? Or are we in that all thing that they all have to be consistent? Can't we be as bold as saying, you wanna have 100 by 200 foot US flag, go get them. And we could be known as a community that says yes to US flags.
Well, the other issue is, if you want to single out US flags, what about people that want to pay homage to I happen to be Norwegian. I want to fly a Norwegian flag, huge.
Have a flag there?
Go ahead and fly in Norwegian.
I'm kidding, I couldn't afford it.
But if it's 4x6, you're gonna need a permit.
But
I'm not gonna fly it.
I don't think we wanna ever be on the front page of any paper that we're taking somebody's US flag down.
Yeah, okay.
I don't wanna be part of it.
I think, why don't we can't we make a notation under banners? And call a banner as anything that's not attached to a flagpole, why don't we change the definition of a banner? If there is one.
There is, it's not in this section, but that's actually, a feasible way of fixing this.
And then just put flags as flags, no restriction.
Striking the green words.
So if I put a pole on the side of my pillar outside my house, is that a flagpole or is that just a banner pole?
Well, if a banner is attached to, like, I think what she's referencing is she's referencing the brew pub in Minocqua. The guy that lost his business because he was, whatever, freedom of speech. And he had it plastered all across the front of his business.
Huge.
Huge.
He was using a flag as a
As
banner.
Well,
Correct.
it
It was
wasn't
more-
really a
yeah.
flag, it was a banner. It was a banner.
Yeah.
It was that big, it was no flag, it was, but.
But that's what this is trying to solve, is
Yeah.
that someone trying to say, oh, it's got the holes, it's a flag. So it's more the use of it. So yeah, we can either change the square footage here or, or
Well, I don't think you wanna exceed a square footage of flag, I don't think it's,
you could even just take out to exceed, and then we can also reference under banners. I can find that section and reference flags are exempt. And it would just reference back to this.
Gary, is that what you're looking at? Is that what you're?
Emily, is that what you mean? Striking out the and not exceed?
Yes, yeah, that's my understanding. gathering is just strike that out to not limit the size, and then under where we define banners, verbiage in the line of flags are not banners or something like that.
I think the first part of that green sentence would be sufficient to prevent what happened in Minocqua. Don't you?
Yeah, making sure it's on a flagpole. Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody have any other input of how you would classify that? I mean, Steve, you had brought up if you put something in there and you wanted to fly a Trump flag. Is that what you're worried about, whether it's Trump or Biden or?
We can't regulate.
I don't care what the flag, if it's an American flag or if it's a
POW
POW flag or a kitty cat flag, I don't care what it says.
But,
Or a Weston flag.
but your concern was what happened in Minocqua, right?
That's the logic between regulating it to a flagpole.
Okay, and what was his statement in Minocqua? Political.
It was a political.
We can't regulate. We can't regulate.
So.
Was that how, was that?
This is a content neutral way to address that in the future. So if someone tried to do that here, it would fall under, he would not be able to, or they would not be able to claim, oh, it's a flag, because I believe that was the logic.
Because under our definition of flag, it has to be on a flagpole, not stapled to a building.
Or mounted on
In
a,
that case. it
Or
would be
mounted on a
banner.
pole, on an angle mounted pole. Whatever, angle pole mounted, I don't know.
I struggle. Why do we have to make all these restrictions? It's like
we're not gonna win.
it's like
People
building-
try to put things
we're
up.
building more restrictions and more restrictions and more restrictions because.
Well, this one was created by the state Supreme Court, so essentially somebody needs to it's the US.
This is US Supreme
US
Court.
Supreme Court. Somebody needs to change it. They basically made one decision because of a church and what they said, and it really hamstrings us for everything, so.
But it only hamstrings your response rather than, isn't it, right now, if we don't have a code, anything goes, right?
Pretty much, I mean,
And the only.
our hands were tied during during all that. I mean, we had both sides yelling at us. We just need some guidance so that we can handle this going forward, because.
So explain to us what the US Supreme Court, explain what you're referencing that they put this, they've done this.
It's the Reed versus Gilbert case of 2015. There was a church that was mobile and put out temporary signs every weekend saying, you know, hey, we're gonna be here this week, we're gonna be here this week. Well, at the same time, there was an election going on. The municipality had different regulations for religious signs, temporary religious and temporary political signs. And so their argument was that they can't be it's freedom of speech. Why is the church being regulated differently from political signs? So the Supreme Court ruled that municipalities cannot regulate by the content of signs. So you can't, that's why we've taken out garage or, we used to say political signs. So
And
taking
all
that verbiage.
codes, I mean, every single sign code in Wisconsin is either not following it. I mean, it basically changed it to where some are just looking away and saying if somebody comes and sues us, then they sue us. We're attempting to bring it to.
Sometimes you'd like to respond with, I don't like my neighbor's sign that's blown by their house.
I can't say that.
I know,
I
it's just,
say that.
it's just crazy, Jen, how.
I know.
You
And
guys gotta waste so much of time listening to complaints like that. It's just ridiculous.
It's getting worse.
It's just absolutely ridiculous.
My standard response would be just ignore it.
Would you, yeah, well, exactly.
I do.
Nobody wants to do that.
I do.
Well, we pay your salaries, that's your job, it says it. So, I mean, that's what we hear. And that's what we deal with, that's what my staff deals with. So we're attempting to basically make this so it's a little bit easier, because it's hard to get yelled at all the time. It really is.
Just make it.
And we do want to have some structure. We don't want to totally get rid of the code because then it would just be anarchy and signs everywhere and.
Get it.
Jim, was there anything else?
Yes?
Okay, go ahead.
Off,
What are we doing with flags before you go on?
So,
Well, she struck the and not exceed 18 square feet. I'm good with that.
yep, so that, and then under the one-time event signs, gonna change that, to, verbiage that says does not include signs or flags as defined in referencing that section. So if it's on a flagpole, it doesn't count as a one-time event, and so would not need a permit. That's how I understood it from,
Steve, are you okay with that? Because you said you could fly it, whatever flag you
I'm
want.
saying no matter what you do, somebody's gonna yank your chain and find a way around it. And I'm concerned that no matter how hard we try to set up the rules or ordinances, somebody's gonna be playing around and we're gonna be wasting a whole lot of time trying to figure out whether we can stop it or not. And I'm just saying that no matter what you do, you're gonna have people that are gonna push the issue.
Yeah, you're right.
One side or another. It's one of those no-win situations.
But we could sit and talk about it for another hour or two. I mean, Randy's got nothing going on, right?
Not doing farming anymore.
other comments?
I do.
Tell all of them,
Let's see, yeah.
Off-premise real estate signs,
and then we'll tell them what we think.
Do you happen to have the section that's under?
no, I think it was just,
They're not allowed as far as that.
Off-premise advertising or off-premise real estate?
so it's off-premise real estate. It references residential, rural, and open space districts. Yeah, here you go. Such as open house
Yes, so
signs,
we're in temporary use.
right.
Yeah,
It mentioned, there is no mention of B1 through 3 industrial, institutional, et cetera. Are they regulated? Are we going to regulate them? Is there no regulation for them?
so that sentence would apply to the whole section.
But it specifically calls out,
So that section talks about both residential and rural.
but it doesn't say non-residential. So how about a B1 parcel? That's not residential, it's not rural,
It's not open zone.
right? Or am I interpreting it wrong? And if there is no regulation, then that's fine, there's no regulation, I just want to
So
point
it
that out.
talks about,
We get one shot every 30 years, I want to make it count.
so there's the within each, and then if you keep reading, actually the second sentence, the second to last sentence, and 64 square feet in area and 12 feet in height in all other districts. So there's the regulation for all other districts. So that would be your B2s, your industrial, your business parks.
So still quantity of one.
Correct. You do
So
one real
the
estate
3
sign.
Lockery signs that are at the Weston Marketplace,
Those are
whichever.
different type of signs. So real estate is for the sale of the property. He's advertising lease of space within his building.
Which falls under,
Nope, apologies, I take that back. So if you're talking for marketplace, I've only seen one right now. I would have to go back out and look.
But I'm
See
saying,
what else is
according
there.
to this, you can only have one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Which is fine, not,
Unless planning commission would like to add more. But yes, only
it
one.
doesn't say one per street, it's on a corner, it's on one of the busiest intersections in our municipality. We're gonna limit the ban to one sign.
We
That'd
can certainly
be tough.
say one per street frontage if you
I mean,
want.
it's a big parcel as well.
Or an aggregate of 64 square feet, or however you wanna do it, but you limit them to one sign the way this is written.
Mr. Tatro, what do you have to think about that?
It's cold by the window. I got my coat on.
Lock wall's gotta be cold.
The window's like nothing.
What is your opinion on these signs? On this situation here?
No matter what you do, you're not gonna win. Really. Because people will put up signs all the time and we go and have talks with them.
What do you mean a parcel in that situation on that corner, what would you, I mean, you're in the business to market.
And that's on a main corner, so really one sign is all you need on that corner.
Well,
You got a lot of traffic going through all directions there.
yeah, well.
You know, if, now you've got a big parcel someplace out further, you might want 2 or 3, but in the main business district, I don't think we need that many signs. And from what I found is people don't look at a lot of signs. We put signs on these doors here of people coming in, this is what you're supposed to do, that's where you're supposed to go. Nobody reads them.
Because they came all the way here, because they want to see somebody, goddamn. That's what they want to do.
It just, you know, we close the doors, we have the window, the service window, we've got a sign up, please use intercom, and they'll stand there looking around.
Yeah.
Is there a decision on this particular item?
I'm gonna say I struggle a little bit. I agree with you, Jim, that this is maybe, that is a big parcel and it is going both directions. But, I understand Scott's point as well. So, I mean, it's kind of permanent once we put it in here, isn't it?
Bring it back next month. I find that's unworkable.
And talk about it for another 2 hours.
The sign code changed in 2015, it's changed.
Oh, so it's not the 30 years?
It's not 30 years.
Okay.
That was just building.
We did this entire code in 2000.
Okay.
I would just
Anything else?
put it on street
Yes.
frontages, that's what we've always done.
Street frontages,
Corner.
you could have 2.
If it's a
One
corner,
per
put
street
one per
frontage.
street frontage.
Taking the issue that you're only allowed 1, is that what you're saying?
What's that?
I think he's bringing it up because he knows that there's a couple on that site.
The only one it's relevant.
Can we change verbiage, so if you're on a corner lot, you can put up,
Aren't gonna put it on.
We would just say 1 per street frontage is typical verbiage, so if you have roads on 3 sides, you get 3.
I think 1 per street frontage is adequate.
Yep.
Personally.
That's fine.
Per street frontage.
Jim, you're located on the corner with 2 frontages, aren't you?
I am,
Okay.
but I don't need a real estate sign. Why, do you wanna buy the joint?
No.
No, okay. Low mileage, one owner,
Make you such a deal.
yeah. There's probably tip funding about, no.
Yeah, the 199 rad guy, he probably needs some help.
Yeah.
Sold this place.
Um,
Trying to sell this.
Construction signs, I think that's the next one on here. It shows 1 sign is permitted not to exceed 12 foot high and 64 square feet. What about additional signage? So you get the 1 sign, or can PGA hang his sign next to it? This says you get a sign. Like at our current municipal center site, Myron Construction has a sign erected, and we have our own future home of the Weston Municipal Center, building a future, or whatever it says. So would that be a non-conforming sign? Or,
So the way this is written does not put a limit of signs on it. So there's currently, because such signs shall be erected no sooner than, so there's currently no
No number on them.
numbers. If planning commission would like to clarify.
Say 64 feet or can't be any higher than 12 feet.
Yeah, so there's no number.
so there's
Each is-
no,
Each is, yeah. There's no number, just a size limit, the way this is written,
so you can have an unlimited number,
Correct.
very well.
associated with the construction, yeah.
So I just got one question with this. During the parade of homes, everybody puts their yard signs up the driveway for advertising.
Yeah.
Can't do that in this situation.
Okay, so hold on, parade of homes, back up. We're talking the H-frame signs?
Yeah.
Those would fall under the temporary signs for non-residential or residential.
So that's not on it. It
So
is,
if it's a residential zone, it would fall under that
Temporary residence.
temporary residential, you get 2.
construction or project identification signs. So that would be more like, like a Myron putting it up and then they might have multiple contractors.
Subcontractors.
And then also maybe a picture of how, what the building.
Future home of-
What you're referencing.
And I can clarify that by just adding commercial
I
construction.
was saying, could we put commercial in?
Yeah, we could absolutely do that.
Sure you got more, Jim.
Could be a residential.
Well, true, there,
could be
The
a
last thing I
sign.
have is about the fee schedule, and I don't know what that really pertains to signs, but I saw that it was at the end. So I don't know if that's technically an agenda item or this is a supporting appendix in the,
Where are we? What page are we talking about?
the last 4 pages of your packet.
That's the fee schedule for the housing study.
That's the housing study.
That's the housing study.
It's a report we give to the
We
state.
have to have.
No, you've got the village municipal fee schedule, where it talks about what it costs to buy an occupancy permit and
That,
stuff.
we have to include that in the report.
That's just that's the fact, that's a statement of the facts. It's not.
I
It's a different
understand
item on
that,
the
but we
housing.
just, yeah, we,
It's a different
I just have 2
item.
comments on that since we're publicly commenting here. I'm very happy that we address the occupancy versus site completion issue in that. I did see a discrepancy though. We're still calling out a sewer meter. I don't know of any sewer meters that have been installed in commercial residential construction.
It's the water meter is a dual purpose water and sewer.
I understand that, but just like it was under everyone's understanding that an occupancy surcharge and a building completion surcharge were the same, the layman.
So your sewer bill is based upon your water usage.
I 100% agree with that, but can we call it a water meter hookup?
Sewer deduct meter, Michael?
Because we have a sewer base rate and I understand that that's what that is, but can we just call it a water meter hookup?
Well, I don't know if, Michael, if that's classified as a water meter hookup. Like Keith had just said, there is another meter charge for a sewer deduct. When you're doing sprinkler system, where they'll meter that and take it off.
Correct, yeah.
So that may be what it's referencing. I'm not.
So is this right here, this 5/8 sewer meter? Is that, what are we talking about? The thing you come by and loop with your Aquahawk joint?
So the sewer meter hookup fee is, it's essentially the cost of metering the sewer flow. So that's based off of, again, the meter in your house, you know, theoretically, the water coming into your house is also the water exiting your house.
Correct.
What you carry in your body.
But there's 2 things that the village may be charging for, Mike, because back in the day.
And the water meter, the deduct meter is the same, so.
Okay.
And they did have where you could connect to the water, but you had to have a private sanitary sewer system, a PAPA. Because I had my home that way. I could connect to the water to get potable water, but I had to have my own sanitary system. That's back many, many years ago.
But that would just be a water meter. And ultimately you have a water meter fee, which would be a water meter. Then you can have a separate water meter in your facility if you're doing irrigation.
Right.
Which only charges, you only get the sewer rate on that.
It deducts the water rate on your yard.
Or excuse me.
Just the water rate.
Yeah.
The top section is the hookup schedule.
Yeah.
So it's free to connect to the water, but we only pay for sewer?
No, it's a connection.
You charge a connection fee for water.
Randy, do you have a question?
Yeah, how does water hookups and fees go with signs? Because we're on signs.
Good question. We're off.
I asked that when I started. This is the wrong forum for that. Please invite me back to a different forum. I'd be happy to show back up. I miss you guys.
Yeah. Okay, we're still on 10, item C, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
So, can I clarify number 2 and 3? If we look at 2 and 3, if we say commercial, are we being redundant with number 3?
And Jen makes a good point. If it's a subdivision project too, you might not want to put commercial under there. And actually, I think I had considered that when I was drafting this.
Okay.
Because you could technically have Swittersky's building their next mansion in Weston, and he wants to put up contractors, and so they could do a 64 square foot sign with whoever the contractor is.
Would that be a development sign then, maybe?
That is just for one.
If it's just with the building permit, during the time of the building permit would not be.
Well, and I guess to Gary's question on the parade of homes, you know, I guess realistically, if the house isn't occupied by somebody living in it yet, You know, and you've got your PJ plumbing, you've got your whoever drywall, you've got your whoever sprinkler system. I mean, you would have more than just 2 temporary signs for, you know, those couple of days where people are coming in. 'Cause
Kitchen's going to Lyle. That's how old
You have to
So those,
you might have 10 different contractors wanting to have their name out there for each house.
Are you saying before the permit or the occupancy is issued?
Yeah.
Okay, yep, yeah, if it's before the occupancy is issued, it would fall under,
well, let's just say occupancy, Scott, you give occupancy
You
permit
have to give occupancy certificates to the parade of homes
prior to them being
Parade of
done.
homes, otherwise they don't qualify.
That's right.
So I'm
So
gonna,
he needs that in order to do that, so we would have an issue with parade homes with that.
if we don't have any more public comment, I'm gonna close that part of it and close the hearing. And we will continue discussions in the discussion part. Is that okay with okay? No other comments from the public? I'm gonna close the hearing. Recommendation from staff.
staff recommends approval with corrections. Whatever planning commission wishes.
Okay, thank you. Item F is discussion and recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the ETZ Committee.
Is there a motion to that effect to approve it with corrections?
I'll make that motion.
Mark?
If I could make a comment before, or I'll
Sure.
take it on the question if you prefer.
We already
whichever.
have a motion on the floor.
I'll withdraw that motion.
Okay, withdrawn the motion by now. Go ahead, Mark.
Just 2 things I wanted to just mention, that on the bottom of page 3, that section 8 sub A should correspond with what was passed in the prior action
That's right.
on the prior item. And then on page 21, in the summary of dimensions and number of signs, there just is a reference in your table under the INT and B1 zoning districts to the CUP, conditional use permit. You changed that language to be special exception on page 18.
Yep, perfect, good catch, I'd missed those.
Okay, I'm sorry, but that's all I had then on the nit.
Is there any more corrections or want to make the motion again?
Make a motion to approve sign ordinance with the corrections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the sign permit and recommend it to the Board of Trustees for the ETZ area. Is there any more discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor of the motion to approve the sign permits with corrections signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. You vote, sign permit, go to the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Milt, I think there is nothing further on the agenda for the ETC. If you want to call for a motion to adjourn the ETC?
Sure. Is there a motion to adjourn the ETZ committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made second to adjourn the ETZ meeting for January, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? ETZ committee is adjourned. Thank you very much. Stay warm.
Thanks, Milt. Item G, discussion and recommendation to the Board of Trustees by the Plan Commission.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Stay warm.
I make a motion to approve with the changes as discussed for the ETC committee.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with changes
Yes.
as submitted by the ETC.
Second by Roy.
Roy, seconded by Rumper. On the question,
Did you want to discuss that more, Gary, that one part? The commercial construction site, or just construction signs?
I don't think I can right now, can I?
well, we would have,
It's on the
we would
question.
have to make a motion to amend.
Friendly amendment.
Huh?
When it,
Yeah, it can be worked out that way as long as we don't.
You let the ETZ go,
Yeah, the ETZ.
Yeah,
would make it a little bit more difficult, but.
you know what we're after, right?
I don't think it's gonna be an issue for.
After this, we have to bring it back, right?
If there's an issue, we'll.
Yeah, if we have an issue this year, we'll bring it
And the
back.
guys are taking them down afterwards anyway. I mean, they're pretty good about it. Well, usually-
Yeah, if it's up for a day and it's a weekend, I don't work weekends, so. Try not to. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything else on the question? I think that's where we are.
Yes.
Did it?
Yeah. Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. We finished item 11 hours ago. We have no referrals from governing body. New business, project number 202000439 from the forest, site plan amendment at 9004 Progress Way.
All right, just bringing this back for acknowledgement for Plan Commission as when Roman was doing his final site review, noticed a few things deviated from the site plan that was approved by Plan Commission and Village Board. As a reminder, this property was sold to the business owner, so Plan Commission and Village Board were the site plan approval authority. So Roman and I worked with the project manager and got things, meeting code as well as just submitting updated as-built, as they added additional asphalt around the dumpster area and rearranged the northwest side of the parking lot on the north side. So that altered slightly, and then some of the landscaping wasn't installed fully, so we got that up to date and fully installed. So with some relocations, relocating of certain landscaping after the fact of realizing it wasn't gonna work. So that's what's before you, is the previously approved site plan, the updated site plan, and then just the updated landscaping. So it's just coming back for acknowledgement.
Just busy acknowledging.
Yep, just letting you guys know, slight changes.
For a motion to acknowledge,
Motion to acknowledge.
by Garrett,
Second.
second by Cronin.
Sure.
On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Staff reports, items 13, 14, and 15. You want to take them separately?
Take them.
I move to acknowledge items 13 through 15.
Second.
We have a motion by Cronin and a second by Mumford to acknowledge items 13 through 15. On the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Miscellaneous, 16, project updates.
Public information meeting for the Weston Avenue project will be on the 31st of this month. We had used that date, was the availability of consultant.
Dale's Weston Lanes.
Dale's Weston Lanes, yes, and it is a meeting that will be conducted by the Public Works Committee. Although I guess we can probably agenda both, the fact that other committees or boards may be present as well as a quorum. Michael, you had something you're gonna say?
It's not a committee meeting, it's just.
I don't know, but we'll have to
It's a big
acknowledge that certain committees would be,
May be there. There may be a quorum of any one of a number of committees involved.
so it's informational for the
Yep, sorry, I thought you.
open house format with some presentation. That goes with
So it's not a public hearing or anything. It's just-
not public hearing.
Informational.
Okay.
It's not a hearing, it's a. Item B,
That's just a project that's still gonna have to come back. Our time has been spent elsewhere, so we'll bring that back as soon as we can. The Metro-wide housing study, I just found out that the person at the RPC that was leading this study for the metro area actually left and went to the city of Wisconsin Rapids. So we need to talk to Dennis to find out kind of when they will be, they're hiring right now for that position, so I'm guessing it'll come up in the spring.
is this the North Central Regional Planning? Board?
Yep. So Carrie left from there. And she was leading that project for Dennis. And then we will be looking at then incorporating and doing some updates to the comprehensive plan for housing and land use to take in part the different corridor studies, corridor plans that we've done, and just in general update it for housing. And Sean has to do his CORP, which is the comprehensive outdoor rec plan, scheduled to be updated. So that's a piece of the comprehensive plan also. So these are just future projects you guys had asked to kind of put these bigger projects out there for you so that they stay on your radar and ours.
Thank you. Any questions for Jen?
Is that meeting on the 31st can be recorded?
I think they usually do.
We'll record the, presentation, question and answer portion.
Awesome.
And that'll be on the website then?
Yeah, we'll get it on Zoom and usually I try to upload those public information meetings for those projects, so residents who can't make it, have something to reference back to.
Okay. Have any announcements and commissioner remarks?
Oh, you have to go back
Yeah, we gotta go back to,
We gotta go with number.
Take it off the table.
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. Is there a motion to?
I move to take item number 8 off the table. And possible.
A motion to
Put it on the table.
Yeah, put it on.
place on the table.
Sure. It's 9 o'clock, I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Garen. On the question? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So carried. Where did we leave off?
I guess trying to get to some decision point as to whether or not the direction Kathy to complete a project plan amendment or public hearing for TID number 2.
I think that summarizes it fairly well.
I haven't heard Roy say anything. Roy, do you have any comments?
Generally on the TID, I'm in favor of having a hearing and with the understanding that we're gonna have an emphasis on project development versus infrastructure costs.
I got a couple of questions that I wanted to just ask. I know when we had the public hearing last time, the people had asked if there's anything gonna happen with it or if they were having any other meetings. And the question was they would be, or the answer to them was they would be notified if there was anything moving forward. Have they been notified? Or we just notify them at the next public hearing?
Just notify for the next public hearing.
Okay, if they want one, because at that night, they thought everything was done, and that's all their answer was, that it was done. And I don't think they knew there would be, because I don't think we knew there would be another public hearing as well. So I just want to make sure that we're not making any residents upset by having conversations about this and moving forward with this without them having any input or
There's another
awareness of it. That's all.
Public hearing up there, John.
I get that. So I just wanted to ask
What
that.
is your question? Will they be specifically invited or
General.
will there be just a general notice?
They asked specifically and were told specifically they had the list.
Okay.
From what I can recall from the meeting, you have a list of everybody that was in attendance and they would let them know if there was any other meeting in regards to it.
They were notified as to the follow-up of that meeting, but as far as anything more, no.
Okay, I just feel with what we have going on or what has happened and what's soured a lot of the grapes is Camp Phillips and the new building project. I feel that we just need to make sure whether it's positive or negative, we just need to make sure we're following back with that. I think that's important.
So are you looking to have them send a specific notice to those people?
I think we ought to
If
look
we
at the
still have
minutes.
that list, I think it would be a good idea.
I think we have an obligation to that because if you listen to that meeting, right, the minute notes, I remember them asking specifically Right, and I recall being told or listening to a comment back to them saying, we have the list, we'll let you know if we have anything going further on it.
We have a list, we can send the hearing notice to them, and we'll also be sending it to all the property owners.
Sure.
That's what we did the last time.
Again, I just wanna make sure we're not trying to show them that we're sliding something under the rug, right? I don't want that impression whatsoever. Then I just had a question, I see that she might have slipped out, but what is the cost impact to the taxpayers for the $3.5 million road cost?
That's the 30 cents per thousand.
It was in the, okay, was that, okay, you did identify that.
Obligation debt, just
Okay.
30 cents.
So it's the 30 cents and then, so we basically, it's gonna cost us another 10 cents to the taxpayer if we don't take the opportunity to extend this TIF and try to incentivize or bring more businesses in. Cause we know for a fact that this probably is not gonna get done, right? Is this $3.5 million gonna get done? Probably not, cause I don't know that the village has the money for it, right? Am I wrong or?
Well,
It's gonna get done.
it would
Right now.
maybe fit into a program somewhere down the line,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, but is it gonna be something that's, eventually I know it has to get done, right? It will have to get done, so. Ultimately, we got what, 20 cents versus 30 cents, so it's 10 cents per thousand.
Right,
But the other,
that's
the
30
other
cents is a one.
taxing is authorities get the other 20, right?
No,
So,
we get 10. And then we get 10.
That's that, they get 10.
They get 10, we get
Then we get 10 or 9, whatever.
The 30 cent would be a one-time assessment though.
It'd be throughout the life of that bond.
For 20 years for
20-year bond.
term of the borrowing.
Okay,
Yeah.
that changes things.
Yes.
Okay,
So that's what I'm trying to say. We have to look at, and that's why I asked staff earlier was, the last meeting was, let's make sure we have dollars and cents so we can make an educated decision like we would do any other day in business of how we need to move forward. And what's the best avenue to do is ultimately, if we had somebody educated that's really savvy with TIF, that can educate our clientele or our customers out in the crowd, I think we could accomplish that. But I don't think we have that experience in this room to make them feel comfortable with it, okay? That's my opinion. We don't, I mean, there ain't one of us that are rocket scientists on this and what's the best thing to do with it, right? So we have to do, I feel what's the best financial for our community.
and I think the other question that they're gonna be asking is, what's changed? We voted no previously, what changed to make us bring it back again?
Well, we reduced the scope of the
The
project.
reduction of
Well, yeah, but
the project.
we may have changed some of the project, but from the beginning, we've always had this, that even though we designated, that doesn't mean what the money's gonna be used for, right? We eliminated this wish list outside of it, outside of the TIF. But my understanding is that once we change the plan and add these dollar amounts, 6 million or whatever it is, that doesn't mean it's gonna be used for.
That's right.
3.5. That doesn't mean that it's gonna be used, for the intersection on, Birch Street or
Well,
whatever. My point,
If you don't use them for that, you can't use it.
Right.
It has to be specific to that.
my understanding was that from initially on, that no, it could be changed.
No, it can't.
That was on
It can't,
It can't, that's
can't
it.
refer to another
It
project.
can only be
But
used for those.
when we had the three different,
Right, I remember seeing that.
right,
So you have to stay within the parameters. That's why the staff, if the staff had an opportunity for somebody to come in and said, hey, I want to build this $10 million complex here, I need some TIF fund, they'll go, we don't have it, we can't. We legally can't give you $1 because our bucket is empty and we don't have it in our plan. We would have to redraw our whole plan in order to give TIF funding. And that's why I was so adamant up front with this little bit of money that was gonna go for TIF, right, for incentive. We're just going in the same direction we did 16 years ago. We're gonna fail this thing. If we can't give incentive to bring these businesses in here to get development and to hire to get an ROI out of this thing, we're not gonna get it. We're gonna fail another TIF. We're gonna just do exactly what the public is thinking we're gonna do, fail. And we're not gonna fail if we do this the right way. We can't fail. We have to get the tax base in here. We have to have incentive to do it. Period. In that short period of time. 4 years, we gotta spend that. And if, you know what? If we don't do it in 4 years, we don't do it. and there's no money lost besides 4 years of time that money could have went to the other districts, right? But it gives us the open opportunity to right now bring in X amount of development, as much as we possibly can in that amount of time and redevelop Schofield Avenue.
And how much is gonna be spent on administrative and consultants?
They got it.
700,000, was it? I'm in the chart. I'm trying to be smart, I'm trying to look at it.
We just have a budget, doesn't mean we're gonna spend that much.
But it does mean you could.
Well,
I'm not trying to play devil's advocate here, I'm just
If
saying.
we fail, we still are on the hook to pay, potential here for general administrative, legal and planning, the $723,000.
You want us to find someone to work with, the market, then we gotta have some budget in there.
But I'm gonna go against that, Keith. I'll just say, I believe that we can do that, but I believe we have to have ties with it and have skin in the game with that.
Correct, it's just like what Dwayne was kind of right in that sense. I mean, if you work with it, if you come up with a consultant that, in order for them to get paid, they have to bring some sort of development in. I think theoretically that could work.
$70,000 that was quoted for, I believe it was Deerfield, created what, $53,000 is what the grant was? I'm saying it, Google it, Google their name and Deerfield. And look at that and analyze the story on her. I'm just saying that I'm not able to approve spending $70,000 on somebody, on a consultant.
I don't think there was any dollars in here for any consultant. right?
No, I'm just saying, I just Googled it to look at it, just Google their name and it comes up Deerfield. There's an article on what the improvements.
What was Deerfield have to do with Weston?
My point
Talking about
is that we've had a bad experience with consultants. And we can't ignore that.
Time out. What do you mean a bad experience?
I'm saying that when we were getting guidance on.
There wasn't a consultant there. That's the thing. You guys are, you keep saying Mark Roffers. He
Mark
was
wasn't
not
involved in
involved at all in
Camp
Camp Phillips Center.
That was the,
But we had a
GSD
Weston,
professionals and, forward development group.
there was a Western corridor plan that he was a part of that didn't happen. What I'm saying is
The
that
quarter plan, you guys just.
after,
approved.
okay.
It's
I'm not in
being
favor
implemented.
of spending $723,000 on administrative expenses, period.
If you have an $8 million project, what's a reasonable percentage to budget for administrative? Is it not 10%?
10%.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm just saying, I'm not looking to give $700,000 of walking around money. I'm just saying that I don't feel that that's,
it's not walking around
And
money.
it doesn't obligate us to pay that either.
that's fine,
It's putting some number in there.
that's fine.
What number are you comfortable with?
I haven't seen anything that's changed that would make me feel comfortable with more than the total amount. I just, not, to me, I'm just not comfortable with seeing us doing this or having anything that's changed, that's gonna give me confidence that this is gonna be accomplished. I'm sorry, it just isn't there. I wish I could, but I'm not there.
So if we don't do anything, the TIF is gonna close. That's it.
So let's vote.
That's the bottom line.
I honestly, I feel we have difference in opinion. And I truthfully think that if we had somebody that was intelligent enough that could educate us on this, and even doing dollars and cents, it's foolish not to extend this TIF to where it needs to be, or where we have the potential to take it to. And I almost feel like, honestly, Steve, I almost feel it as a challenge, to be honest with you. And I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that we get what we need to do moving forward. I take it on personally.
Well, what kind of oversight, I mean, what kind of oversight do we as the plan commission have after we have a public hearing on it? I mean, at that point, anything that happens, any sort of development that comes in, or any sort of development agreement is gonna go through the board.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, there's no,
And the makeup of the board is gonna change.
it is, correct.
But you're gonna see any of the projects that come through,
It's like,
that receive any of the money.
So if we had, let me just, and I'm just gonna throw this out here, Steve. If we had a consultant on, that worked for say they brought, another Target here, or whatever, just say they brought Target here, right? Target wasn't here. If they brought a Target facility into our community and it was a $20 million building, a $15 million building, $15 million project, what is fair to give Target to come here?
Provide, don't give. We don't give, we provide.
Whatever, I'm using that number. What do we throw, what would we want to bring $15 million in here? I look at it like if I'm gonna go to the casino, right? And not that I'm a casino person, but if I throw out $200 here, if I can get 1,000 back.
I'm struggling with the mixed use and having apartments that we're financing or subsidizing. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
In the sense that brings another layer of obligation that we may or may not know about.
We have.
So just let me finish. So when the village board approved the 3 years or the 3 grants to, the elderly housing or the over 65 or whatever it is out in Weston, but yet we have to absorb all the cost of all the ambulances, that, at least that's what I've heard. I think we gotta address that thing, just as if we're gonna be subsidizing apartments and we have 1.3 children per apartment or whatever it is, we in essence are subsidizing that at the expense of DC Everest. And whether we should give consideration or not, I don't think we should be subsidizing the residential use along Schofield. I just don't feel that that's the proper way of doing that.
If we were in a 20-year term or 15-year term on that, when you say, first of all, we've got a right to put in whatever percentage we want. We can put a percentage in. If you want to say it's 50% commercial versus 50% mixed use, we could put that stipulation in there. Whatever stipulation we want to in there.
That's not how it's being presented though.
We can, we're in control of doing this though. We're in control of this by putting whatever we want when we approve this right now. We can do that. Or we don't, it goes to public hearing, right? And we should be able to have comment on that. We should have say into that, right? So if we do that, and let's just say this complex was $10 million and 5 of it was commercial and 5 of it was residential. 4 years, DC Everest has to pick that up, right? 4 years of spending, but then it goes to 2031, which would be X amount before they would get their taxes. But I'm assuming.
Typically though, as soon as your spending is done, you have X number of years after that to close the TIF. So just because your spending is done, doesn't mean it closes.
And that's what I'm just gonna say. I believe though, once it's been paid and you got cash there, that's not being, I think you have to close. So if it cash flows itself out prior to that, you gotta close. You can't just sit there and keep it.
Collected enough.
We've been sitting here keeping the money right now
Well, that's.
for several years.
I don't know if that's been several years. There's a loan out right now with the tax base just now that's capable of doing that. That's why they're in.
That's why April is the deadline, right?
That's why they were in the.
Satisfied this year.
Yes. There's enough cash in there this year to do that.
To pay that.
Yes. So
What if is there a way that we could put our own skin in the game? So Schofield Ave needs to get redone, correct? When we earmark this, we make the amendment, we earmark $8 million for this amendment. What if we put a stipulation in there that you have to have X amount of dollars worth of development that occurs in that corridor before we can rebuild the road?
I don't think that's a problem. I won't have a problem with that. I think that's right up what Joe was trying to say as well. Why do we want to have that redone before we
know what's going on?
Before we have that? Let's get this, and that may be a huge feat in 4 years, right? It's really gonna depend upon what's happened with our economy as well. But, honestly, once you advertise you're open and are willing to help or incentivize business to come to your community, unless you're gonna say, here, we can sell you land at 25,000, Joe, and I'm gonna ask Joe to step in with that. What was some of the reasons, Joe, that you guys chose here than in other communities besides, you have flat ground and whatever?
Yeah, so the idea that Dean offered us acreage at $10,000 an acre was, I mean, it was a no-brainer for Ron and I to decide to move to Weston and looked at all of the other incentives that Dean was trying to give us based on how many employees we're gonna have and all that sort of stuff, and I said, we don't even want any of that. The incentive was the flat ground. The development cost was, I mean, it was almost zero. Push the black dirt off and you can build. And $10,000 an acre, I mean, it's like, holy cow. I mean, anywhere else at the time, we were paying $50,000 an acre for a lot similar to that had, you know,
More infrastructure costs.
highway access, you know, where you weren't way out in the sticks, so. Does it make a difference? You're damn right.
One thing I noticed was that, page 63, titled, "What benefits would there be to landowners and business owners?" What I didn't see was, what benefits are there to our residents?
It's a very fair point.
Okay, well, the whole idea of this is to raise the tax base so that you spread out these additional services over a greater, I mean, we need 100 employees at Weston Supply. Can't get them. And part of it is, where are they living, you know, and that sort of thing, you know, and I just, you know, if we're gonna generate all these jobs here in Weston, I'd really like those people to be living in Weston, spending the money that they earn at Weston Supply locally, as opposed to driving to Wittenberg, Burnhamwood, you know, Tigerton. People live out 30 miles from here because it's less
They
expensive.
want to. Sometimes because they want
Oh,
to.
yeah, well, because it's less expensive,
Right. It's expensive to live here.
right, so.
And we're not making it any cheaper by adding additional net new development adds to the tax levy. Isn't that right?
And that growth in the
That-
TID counts towards our tax levy.
Your,
It's a correct statement by Mr. Russell.
up because of what we're going to be doing in the TID. Everyone's taxes throughout the entire village is going to be going up when you're successful.
And the alternative is
And the,
nothing, you know, I mean,
well,
We still
how
have,
do we sell that to our residents? That we just increased your taxes so that we can bring in further development?
Well, I guess I would say, well, I don't know, would you rather pay the 10 cents more per thousands? Or would you rather, for the road to be fixed? Or would you rather try to see us get some more development so we don't have to pay that?
I mean, have you driven this?
But you're gonna have to wait 8-10 years to get it.
that also doesn't.
It depends on what's spent and what's brought in.
If there's no development, we still have increase in costs of running this village, no matter
I
what.
understand that.
Personnel, fuel.
You can't grow a
Materials.
community, you can't continue a community without growth because it goes backwards.
Schofield Avenue is gonna have to be fixed, no matter what, at some point in time. And it's going to cost the residents some portion of that. There's just no getting around it.
But this is far beyond Schofield Avenue.
No. Why do you say that?
The numbers for infrastructure were beyond Schofield Avenue, right?
On Schofield Avenue. All we
Everything's on
proposed
Schofield
infrastructure.
Are you talking about the chart with all the
4.2
projects?
is the cost of Schofield Avenue now 4.2?
No, that's all.
3.5 and then the other 750 was the land acquisition potentially being included.
And we can make this whatever we want. This does not have to be any, they're saying, what do we want to do? Do we want to extend it? This doesn't mean we have to have everything figured out tonight. That's not what you guys are asking.
No.
We either need to have a direction that we want to move forward, and from there, we can write a honey-do list on how we want this done, how we want to present it. If we go to that chart, Michael, what page is that chart on, what the expenditures are?
68.
Not that one,
There's a previous one, wasn't there?
Are we talking about the one with all the different projects?
Yes.
That's in the attachment. That was the backup, the background for the,
Anybody know what page?
follows the presentation in the packet, probably. So it should be one of those, it's attached.
Yeah, 44, is that what you're saying?
Page 44, I think, yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Precedes the attachment.
Right here,
Okay.
draft.
Yeah, so I think, so are you struggling with the number twos?
Actually, I'm just struggling with that. Every success within the TID falls upon people outside of the TID. So your net new construction levy is increased while you're successful until that TID closes. And right now, I believe Keith had a number of, we're at 29% of our equalized value is in TIDs in our village, 29%. The state recommends 12.
Yeah, if we minus,
So my
TID one is,
recommendations that we, again, the 2.7 or whatever, the less than 3% is it's very small relative to the total. If we want to talk about strategically reducing it, we got to look at something in TID 1 where it's not going to be impactful, whatever happens here. So what is our priority? Is it to help develop Schofield Avenue or is it not?
The problem,
Commission.
even though this is not the subject, the problem with TID is the TID was set up so it was industrial. We got to be careful about what we take out of there. It has to remain a certain percentage as industrial.
Right.
We start taking out too much industrial, we just violated our own TID.
Well,
Along.
it's essentially all along Highway 29, from the hospital all the way to J. So there's plenty of land that could be looked at.
And some
And
has
that-
been taken out.
There's plenty of land that could be taken out.
okay, let's stay on one,
On topic, which is TID 2.
yes. So can we take a premature roll call or a vote,
No, you need a
motion?
motion. This is what staff is looking for. They want to know. Oh, dang, battery's dead. They want to know how to proceed. Either have them go through the process of drafting an amendment to the plan, or have them start the process to close the TID. Pretty much it, right?
I want to make a motion to move forward with making amendment to it, but I also want to have us to have the ability to have another meeting on this and make some stipulations in these with dollar values that we can, and having someone on board that has skin in the game to market. If we don't have that, we have nothing moving forward. And we really need to lean on staff. I'm gonna say Jen and Emily to work with us on getting development in here. And be as open and helpful and whatever the heck we can do to get them in here.
So could you make that into a shorter motion?
I don't know.
Sure you can. You're skilled.
I make a motion to, I don't know. Make a motion to move forward, to have them look at making it, can we make it to the next meeting, as I'll ask that, can we communicate?
We need to understand, we gotta kind of back up the timeline to understand what kind of public notification requirement we have prior to having the hearing.
Well, I don't think we need to have a meeting before we have a hearing.
Yeah,
Understand.
that's fine.
So whether that's a special,
We're going from there backwards.
whether that's a special meeting or at our next regular meeting, I don't know, but you know, at latest, I would think that we could consider having the public hearing to be the March.
Well, I think this is important for our community. I'm up for having a special meeting. Is anybody else?
I'm totally for having a special meeting.
I'm for that.
I'd rather have a night where we come in and just talk about this and nothing else. I mean,
I agree.
So, again, revisiting your motion, sir.
I make a motion for us to move forward and have staff schedule another meeting that we can communicate together as a team on how to move forward to get TIF 2 and Schofield Avenue moving.
That is your motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second,
Second by Jordan. He beat you
that's fine.
on the question. Roll call vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No. Roll call anyway.
No,
Marshall and Minell, opposed. Motion is carried. Okay. Where are we now? Yes, I think we finished everything on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we wanna discuss some possible meeting dates real quick?
We'll have to send something out. We'll send a doodle poll
A
out.
doodle poll.
Okay.
There's other village meetings.
Can I ask, I don't know how to do this, or ask this, or I know how to ask it, obviously, but I didn't know if this could be part of the motion or not, but
It's too late.
is there a possibility we can get a consultant in our next meeting that we can have available via Zoom, or available to walk us, educate us on this?
Yeah, I guess, do you have perhaps, a list of questions that you're trying to address?
I think it probably be
Try to
better for
anticipate
each
what-
of us to email Mr. Donner with our questions. So that it falls upon us to get the questions. He'll have to put them together and try to correlate them and
We
get them.
can, but there's gonna be questions that'll be asked as we go, like Gail,
Right,
we
and
may
I-
have some, Gail, that
I'm positive we won't have all the questions in
we'll
all.
start talking and all of a sudden I'll have one and you'll have something that, because you're very in tune with what you're
I have a
doing.
question, because if you're looking at hiring somebody to do that, wouldn't you be putting out an RFP and the board would be interviewing them? I would think.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we're not even moving we haven't gotten that far, right? So in the meantime, we just want to have somebody available to answer some of our questions and maybe financial
I guess
understanding.
what Jen's saying is I don't know if anybody's gonna be able to do that without getting paid.
I mean, are you looking
I
for like a
think,
finance person, a development person?
No, a TIF person, just somebody that knows TIF real well.
Well, okay, so Kristen
was on
actually
the phone.
was online tonight. I think she was just listening in. But we could certainly ask her to come and attend the meeting. What is your?
I'm assuming if we ask her if she's one of the ones that would be on the list to hire or potentially hire, or I'm assuming, I don't know that she would charge if it's if it's an hour or two. And I don't know that she'd have to be on the whole entire time, but I think it'd be important to have someone like that educate us a little bit more than some of our thoughts and misconceptions of it.
Well, based on how these meetings go, she probably have to set aside like a 4 or 5 months. But no, I would think she would
you did kind of want more.
certainly pay a nominal fee for her to do that.
Well, you know, if you as staff are going out to find a consultant, isn't there some expectation that the people that you interview would come in and make a presentation? Yeah,
That's
on their dime?
That was my point with Kristen. I don't think she would have an issue with that, but maybe I'm looking at that wrong.
Pitch their consulting service to us.
Right. Well, and the way that you pitch a consulting service is based on
Specific
success.
issues. Yeah.
Well, you know, your knowledge that you bring and.
How
and the
comfortable
success
we
that you
feel with
have.
her. Yeah.
So I would think that,
Sure. We'll follow up with her. Do that.
and it's helpful that she knows the area, obviously. And,
What I thought.
Okay. Do you have some idea of the direction the plan commission is seeking, Mr. Donner?
I think so.
Jessica, okay in there?
That's
Oh, Val?
She's sleeping.
Okay. So are we ready to adjourn now?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion by Cronin, second by Garrett to adjourn. On the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Meeting is adjourned at 9:30 on my PC.